Chapter 1190. Why? Yan Wei was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, because of his conceit. He is not just conceited. Lu Hong smiled coldly and looked at Qin Feiyang. When Dong Qin confessed, she also said that he wanted to use you as a stepping stone. Stepping stone. Qin Feiyang was stunned. That's right. After following Mu Tianyang, not only did his strength soar, but his self-confidence and vanity also began to inflate. Lu Hong shook her head and sneered. Among the younger generation in the world, who dared to say that they would use Qin Feiyang as a stepping stone? This Zhang Jin really didn't know what was good for him and overestimated himself. Then let him continue to be arrogant. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Originally, he still had some sympathy for Zhang Jin, but now it seemed that he was thinking too much. There was a saying that a pitiful person must have something hateful. This Zhang Jin was a good example. By the way, these days, have you seen the two women who came to worship? Yan Wei asked. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. You don't have to worry about this. Since they came to worship, they must have some connection with Iron Ox Town. Maybe one day, they will take the initiative to appear in front of you. Lu Hong comforted. Qin Feiyang nodded. Next, the three of them also sat cross-legged on the ground to stabilize their cultivation. In a flash, another 5 days passed. This time, even Qin Feiyang couldn't stay calm. Even if the giant python's cultivation was weaker than everyone, it didn't need to take so long. Moreover, it was also because of its weak cultivation that it ate the least divine meat among all of them. Logically speaking, it should have woken up long ago. But why was there no movement until now? If it wasn't for its aura, even Qin Feiyang would think that it was already dead. No. I have to go down and take a look, Qin Feiyang said. The giant python had just started following him. If something were to happen to it, wouldn't he become a laughingstock if word got out? Boom. However, just as he stood up, a shocking aura rushed out from the bottom of the lake. In an instant, everyone stood up. This aura belonged to the giant python. Her aura continued to soar. 1-star battle sect. 2-star battle ancestor. He only stopped when he was a 3-star war ancestor. Damn, it actually broke through 3 small realms in a row? Everyone was dumbfounded. But then, an even more shocking scene appeared. The giant python's aura was gradually changing. Amidst the original ferocious might, there was now a faint trace of dragon might. What's the situation? Everyone looked at each other before looking at the lake again. Their eyes were filled with bewilderment. As time quietly passed, the dragon's might became more and more intense. Groan. Suddenly, accompanied by a loud and clear dragon roar, a huge creature rushed out from the bottom of the lake, setting off huge waves. Its body was over 300 meters long, and it looked like a snake or a dragon. Its entire body was covered in earthen yellow scales. That dragon might came from its body. This is Flood Dragon. Qin Feiyang and the others were all dumbfounded. The black dragon snake swallowed its saliva and said, You can't be. It's me, can't you recognize me? The Flood Dragon looked at everyone in confusion. His voice was like a bell, deafening to the ears. It's really you. How did you transform into a Flood Dragon? The black dragon snake's eyes were filled with disbelief. That's right. The Flood Dragon in front of him was the giant python. The Flood Dragon said, I don't know either. After eating the divine meat, I fell into a deep sleep at the bottom of the lake. When I woke up, I became like this. This? The black dragon snake held its breath and roared at Qin Feiyang and the others. Did you see that? This is called a great fortune. What is our little harvest? Everyone couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Indeed. Compared to the giant python, their little harvest was like heaven and earth. One had to know. Whether it was a snake or a python, as long as it transformed into a flood dragon, it was equivalent to a fish leaping through the dragon's gate, a true rebirth. Although it couldn't compare to a real divine dragon, it was much stronger than other fierce beasts. The most important thing was, once it transformed into a flood dragon, whether it was the power of its bloodline or its potential, it would undergo earth-shaking changes. It might even be able to transform into a real divine dragon in the future. I'm a little jealous of you. The black dragon snake said powerlessly. I'm a little jealous too. The spirit snake emperor muttered. Although the black dragon snake looked like a dragon, it didn't have the inheritance of a dragon. And although the spirit snake emperor was powerful, it was completely unrelated to a dragon. Therefore, they also yearned to transform into a real dragon. But this kind of thing was impossible without a particularly heaven-defying opportunity and luck. Hee. Looking at the two beasts' discouraged looks, the flood dragon felt a little embarrassed. Qin Feiyong patted the heads of the two beasts and said with a smile, "All right, don't be dejected. There's still a long time. Who can predict what will happen in the future?" "That's true." The two beasts nodded. Qin Feiyong looked up at the flood dragon and said with a smile, "Congratulations." The flood dragon chuckled and said shyly, "This is all your credit. I will definitely repay you in the future. We're all on the same side. Why are you being so polite?" Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. Then he retracted his ice blade and looked at everyone. "After resting for a while, it's time to deal with business. Let's go to the castle to cultivate." Everyone nodded. The flood dragon's huge body shrank to a meter long and flew in front of everyone. It looked a little distant. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sent everyone to the castle, leaving only Yan Wei outside. "Where are we going now?" Yan Wei asked. "The imperial capital." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He took out the space-time gate and handed it to Yan Wei. Yan Wei activated his battle chi and was about to awaken. "Wait." But suddenly, Qin Feiyong stopped him. "What's wrong?" Yan Wei was puzzled. "Let's enter the imperial capital through the teleportation altar in the Butterfly Valley," Qin Feiyong said. The space-time gate could only be opened once a day. If it was opened now and an accident happened after entering the imperial capital, wouldn't it be disastrous? Therefore, it was better to leave the space-time gate open in case of any accidents. But when he heard that they were going to the Butterfly Valley, Yan Wei immediately objected. "The Butterfly Valley must be heavily guarded now. If you go there now, won't you be walking into a trap?" Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "Let's go and take a look first." "All right." Yan Wei nodded helplessly and opened the teleportation gate. The two of them walked in one after another. Qin Feiyong went to the imperial capital for Zhang Jin and Lu Xingchen. There was no point in looking for Ran Duxing now. He would definitely not be able to find him. Therefore, he might as well look for Lu Xingchen and Zhang Jin directly. Above the Butterfly Valley, Qin Feiyong and Zhang Jin appeared out of thin air. The moment they appeared, Yan Wei scanned the valley below, his eyes full of vigilance. However, in the end, he found that there was not a single person in the huge valley. It was dead silent. "This is strange. Why didn't they send anyone to guard it?" Yan Wei was suspicious. "Unless they send a false god, they are all here to die," Qin Feiyong said. Yan Wei was stunned and could not help laughing. He was too cautious. Indeed. Over the years, they killed a group of people sent by the imperial capital. In the face of such a situation, as long as the people in the imperial capital were not stupid, they would definitely consider carefully before sending people here. Whoosh! The two of them turned into a stream of light and rushed down. After a while, the two of them entered the secret chamber and stood in front of the teleportation altar. Yan Wei immediately activated his battle aura to revive the altar. When the altar was revived, he turned to look at Qin Feiyong and said, "Old man Qin is no longer trustworthy, you must be careful." Qin Feiyong nodded, sent Yan Wei to the castle, and stepped onto the altar. For him, the imperial capital was now a dragon's pool and tiger's den. But sometimes, even if he knew it was a dragon's pool and tiger's den, he still had to take a trip. At the same time, pagoda. When the teleportation altar was revived, the pagoda door quickly opened. A white-haired old man stood in front of the pagoda door. It was Old Man Qin. He looked at the bloody teleportation altar, his eyes flickering. Suddenly, he took a step forward and landed in front of the altar. Then, with a wave of his hand, the pagoda door quickly closed again. Almost the moment the pagoda door closed, Qin Feiyong appeared on the altar. Old Man Qin said indifferently, "It's really you." Qin Feiyong jumped down from the altar and looked at Old Man Qin. "It seems that you have been waiting for me." Old Man Qin said, "Didn't you come to the imperial capital to look for this old man?" "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded. Old Man Qin said, "Speak. I want Lu Xingqian. Qin Feiyong did not talk nonsense and directly stated the purpose of his visit. Old man Qin raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you want him to do?" Qin Feiyong said, "Don't worry about that. The news of Mu Tianyang's return has been confirmed. And Lu Xingqian is related to Mu Tianyang. Do you think this old man will return him to you?" "Even if this old man is willing, His Majesty and the Imperial Preceptor will not allow this old man to do so. Because they also know that Lu Xingqian is now imprisoned in the divine prison. So this matter is not negotiable." Old man Qin's attitude was very firm. And this was also within Qin Feiyong's expectations. He smiled coldly and said, "Then I'll tell you the truth. The relationship between Lu Xingqian and Mu Tianyang is actually not that great." "Not that great?" Old man Qin was stunned and frowned. "Didn't you tell this old man that Lu Xingqian is Mu Tianyang?" Qin Feiyong said indifferently, "If I didn't say that, would you do your best to help me watch over him?" Old man Qin's face darkened slightly and asked, "Then who is Mu Tianyang's real body?" Qin Feiyong said, "Didn't you see it? It's the person who fought with the Imperial Preceptor in the hinterland of the magical Dragon Mountains." Old man Qin stared at Qin Feiyong in silence. He really didn't know which of Qin Feiyong's words was true and which were false. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, "Mu Tianyang is omnipotent and only I can find him. If you don't return Lu Xingqian to me, then I'm sorry, I won't care about this matter anymore." "Are you threatening this old man?" Old man Qin's eyes were cold. "So what if I'm threatening you?" "At first, I thought you were a good person, at least a little better than the Imperial Preceptor. But in the end, you actually schemed against me. If I wasn't suspicious, I still wouldn't know how much of a threat your killing intent was to me. Do you know? You're cheating my trust in you. And trust only comes once. If you miss it, it's gone." Qin Feiyong sneered. Old man Qin's face was slightly gloomy. After a long time, he sighed deeply and said, "Fine, this matter is indeed my fault. This old man will do as you say and return Lu Xingqian to you." "Heard." Qin Feiyong's expression was the same as usual, but he secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although he looked so calm before, he was actually very nervous. After all, old man Qin was not an ordinary person. The slightest flaw would be noticed. Old man Qin waved his hand. Qin Feiyong only felt his body lighten. The next moment, he appeared in a sealed secret room. The secret room was not big. It was about 100 feet wide and empty. Lu Xingqian was lying in the center of the secret room, unconscious. "This is the divine prison?" Qin Feiyong glanced at Lu Xingqian, then looked around the secret room, his brows tightly knitted together. The secret room in front of him was not the least bit similar to the divine prison he was familiar with. Old man Qin said, "This is not the divine prison, but the top floor of the pagoda. Only a few people can enter here and it can be isolated from the outside world. It can be considered a prison." "The top floor of the pagoda?" Qin Feiyong was stunned and frowned. "Then why did you say that Lu Xingqian was locked in the divine prison?" "This old man is just testing you," said the old man. Old man Qin said. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and said, "So, the Emperor and the State Preceptor know that Lu Xingqian is also lying to me?" "Yes." "They don't know that Lu Xingqian is in my hands. They don't know that Lu Xingqian is related to Mu Tianyang." Old man Qin nodded. "Why didn't you tell them?" This time, it was Qin Feiyong who was puzzled. Old man Qin actually hid such an important matter from the Emperor? It was obviously unreasonable. Old man Qin said, "Because now, I don't want them to know that I have private contact with you." Qin Feiyong said, "Is this important?" "Very important. Although I did scheme against you this time, I really don't have any ill intentions towards you. Otherwise, my murderous intent would have killed you long ago." Old man Qin sighed. Qin Feiyong frowned and said, "What exactly do you want to do?" "I want to protect the great Qin Empire. I can't see through the State Preceptor, so I have to be wary of him. And you, although you are indeed protecting the great Qin Empire now, I can't guess or see what you are thinking, so I have to be wary of you." "This is why I lied to you," Old man Qin said. "Protect the great Qin Empire," Qin Feiyong murmured. Putting aside the prejudice of the past, this person was indeed an old man worthy of respect. But was he really trustworthy? Qin Feiyong said, What about the emperor? I can understand why you didn't tell the state preceptor, but why did you hide it from him? Old Qin pondered for a moment before he let out a long sigh and said, I've watched your father grow up, so I know him very well. However, I've slowly noticed that he has changed during these years. He has changed. Qin Feiyong snorted coldly. Old man Qin shook his head and said, The change I'm talking about is not in his emotions, but his personality. Personality? Qin Feiyong was surprised. Yes. His personality has become more and more unfathomable, and he has become extremely shrewd and unpredictable. It's precisely because I can't guess what he is thinking that I hid it from him. Old man Qin said. Qin Feiyong's eyes flickered. Old man Qin waved his hand and said, Let's not talk about this. You can take Lu Xingchen away, but you have to agree to a request of mine. Speak. Qin Feiyong said. Old man Qin said with a serious expression, Don't do anything that will harm the great Qin Empire. Otherwise, even if you have the legacy of the late emperor and have the protection of the late emperor, I won't let you off. I don't need you to remind me of this. Qin Feiyong said indifferently. Chapter 1191. It was because of his ancestor that he activated the purple gold dragon soul. It was because of his ancestor that he obtained the dragon god's secret art. It was also because of his ancestor that his bloodline power could revert to its ancestor. And it was also because of his ancestor that his life could be extended. Back then, if it weren't for his ancestor's protection, he would have already died when he destroyed his bloodline power. Therefore, he had to protect the territory left by his ancestor, even if it was at the cost of his life. Old man Qin took a deep look at Qin Feiyong, breathed a sigh of relief, and smiled. Then you can take him away. Although he couldn't see through Qin Feiyong, he still believed in this point. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sent Lu Xingchen to the castle. Old man Qin asked, Where are you going next? To find someone. Qin Feiyong said. Who? Old man Qin was suspicious. Mu Tianyang's lackey. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with killing intent. A blood debt must be repaid with blood. Old man Qin said, Do you need this old man's help? No, you just have to tell me, since you came back from the Magic Dragon Mountain range, has anyone left the capital? Qin Feiyong said. No. Old man Qin shook his head. Then he will definitely die today. Qin Feiyong sneered. Old man Qin's face couldn't help but show a trace of sympathy. This was sympathy for Zhang Jin. Being targeted by this kid in front of him was even more painful and desperate than being targeted by the devil. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something and said, By the way, there's something I must tell you. What? Qin Feiyong asked. Old man Qin said, After returning from the Magic Dragon Mountain range, the Imperial Preceptor accused you of treason in front of His Majesty, saying that you and Mu Tianyang are colluding to overthrow the great Qin Empire. Do you believe it? Qin Feiyong sneered. Old man Qin said, It doesn't matter if I believe it or not, but His Majesty seems to believe it. Qin Feiyong said, I think he's getting more and more muddle-headed. Old man Qin frowned. He's your father after all. Isn't it inappropriate to say that? Upon hearing this, Qin Feiyong's face darkened. Seeing this, old man Qin sighed inwardly and immediately changed the topic with a smile. Take out your image crystal. We'll establish a contract bridge so that we can contact each other in the future. Qin Feiyong nodded. After the contract bridge was established, Old man Qin brought Qin Feiyong to the first floor of the pagoda. He smiled and said, Go do your work. If you need any help, don't hesitate to let me know. Qin Feiyong glanced at him, then turned and walked towards the tower door. Old man Qin waved his hand and the pagoda door opened. Just as Qin Feiyong walked out of the pagoda, a terrifying aura came from afar. He immediately raised his head to look, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. It's the Imperial Tutor. Old man Qin's expression also changed. He hurriedly walked to Qin Feiyong's side and said in a deep voice, Go to the top floor and hide. After saying that, with a wave of his hand, Qin Feiyong instantly disappeared without a trace. Not long after, an old man in white broke through the air and landed on the square in front of the pagoda. Who else could it be but the state preceptor? Old man Qin smiled calmly and asked, State preceptor, where are you going? Nowhere. The state preceptor was also full of smiles. Old man Qin asked suspiciously, Then what are you doing here? Don't tell me you're here to enjoy the scenery. There's nothing to see here. I'm busy every day. How can I have time for such boring things? I'm here this time with His Majesty's Imperial Edict. The State Preceptor said. What Imperial Edict? Old Man Qin frowned. The State Preceptor smiled and said, His Majesty orders you to go to the Spirit State and guard the Butterfly Valley. Impossible. Old Man Qin immediately said. See for yourself. The State Preceptor waved his hand, and an Imperial Edict fell into Old Man Qin's hand. Old Man Qin opened the Imperial Edict and looked at it. His face instantly darkened. He looked up at the State Preceptor and asked, Why do I have to go? I have no choice. Qin Feiyong's strength is getting stronger. If we continue to send the Invincible Black Army and the Kirin Army to the Spirit State, we will only die in vain. So I have to trouble you, the famous false god. The State Preceptor said. Old Man Qin said angrily, I'm not the only false god in the Imperial Palace. You and those old monsters are the same. Why don't you all go, but I have to go? Those old monsters have all entered a state of self-sealing. His Majesty naturally can't let them go. As for me, I have to deal with all the trivial matters in the godly palace. I can't leave. So I have to let you go. The State Preceptor said. Old Man Qin said in a deep voice, What about the pagoda? Who will guard it? The State Preceptor laughed and said, Do you remember Zhuge Nanhua? Although he's not as strong as you, he's still a 9-star combat emperor. It's not a problem for him to guard this pagoda. Zhuge Nanhua. Old Man Qin's eyes flickered. The State Preceptor said with a smile, Get ready. We'll go to the Spirit State tomorrow. If you meet Qin Feiyong there, don't let him run away. Otherwise, your reputation as a false god will be ruined. Then, he turned around and left. After watching the State Preceptor leave, Old Man Qin looked down at the Imperial Edict. With a glint in his eyes, he turned around and entered the pagoda, landing on the top floor. What is the State Preceptor doing here? Qin Feiyong asked. See for yourself. Old Man Qin threw the Imperial Edict to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong caught the Imperial Edict and looked at Old Man Qin suspiciously. He opened the Imperial Edict and smiled. I didn't expect them to think that I'm so important. They want me, a false god, to guard the Butterfly Valley just to deal with you. Do you think you're so awesome? You think you're special? Old Man Qin said angrily. Don't you think so? Qin Feiyong retorted. Old Man Qin rolled his eyes at him with an irritated expression. Qin Feiyong smiled. Actually, this is a good thing. I often go to the Forgotten Continent. With you around, it'll be more convenient. Of course I know that. What I'm worried about is that if I'm not in the Imperial capital, the State Preceptor will be even more lawless. Because no one can suppress him. Old Man Qin said. Qin Feiyong said, Aren't there other false gods? They're all sealing themselves. They won't care about what happens outside. Unless it's like last time, when you brought 2 false gods to the Imperial capital. Most importantly, the person who will guard the pagoda is Zhuge Nanhua. Old Man Qin rubbed his temples. He had a headache. Zhuge Nanhua? Qin Feiyong frowned. This name sounded familiar. Old Man Qin said, Don't you remember? Zhuge Nanhua is Zhuge Mingyang's great-grandfather. He's also the hallmaster of the Law Enforcement Hall. So it's him. Qin Feiyong was enlightened. This person's cultivation is also very strong. I heard that he has reached the peak of the 9-star combat emperor realm. He's only 1 step away from the false god realm. But that's not the point. The point is that he's the State Preceptor's confidant. Old Man Qin said. What? He's also the State Preceptor's confidant? Qin Feiyong was surprised. That's right. I've investigated all the people around the State Preceptor. On the surface, they seem to be loyal to the Emperor, but in reality, they're all loyal to the State Preceptor. The State Preceptor's wings are fat now. I really don't know what he'll do after I'm gone. Old Man Qin was worried. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed and said, Don't worry and go to the Butterfly Valley. I'll investigate the State Preceptor. You. Old Man Qin looked at Qin Feiyong strangely and said, It's not that I don't trust you. It's just that this matter is too difficult. You can't even get close to him. How are you going to investigate him? Investigating a person doesn't necessarily mean getting close to him. In short, I'm confident, Qin Feiyong said. Seeing Qin Feiyong's confident face, Old Man Qin frowned and nodded. Well, I'll leave this matter to you. Qin Feiyong nodded and said, Send me out. Old Man Qin brought Qin Feiyong directly to the square in front of the pagoda. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and opened the portal. There's one more thing. I want to remind you. Don't cause trouble in the imperial capital in the future. Because not only are there other false gods hiding in the imperial capital, but there's also a powerful divine artifact. Just as Qin Feiyong was about to enter the portal, Old Man Qin secretly transmitted his voice. A powerful divine artifact. Qin Feiyong's eyes narrowed. He turned to look at Old Man Qin and said, I'll remember. After saying that, he entered the portal without looking back. The future belongs to him. Old Man Qin shook his head and sighed. He also opened the portal and left. Black Dragon Pool. Qin Feiyong once again appeared in this place, but he didn't stop and went to the castle. Inside the castle, everyone was cultivating in seclusion. Only Yan Wei stood at the side, looking at Lu Xingchen and Mu Qing. Both of them were unconscious. Qin Feiyong looked at the two of them and said to Yan Wei, Wake Mu Qing up. Yan Wei nodded, walked up, and slapped Mu Qing a few times. Immediately, Mu Qing woke up, his face twisted in pain. Lord. When he saw Lu Xingchen, he immediately forgot about the pain. He quickly got up and ran towards Lu Xingchen. Stop. Yan Wei stepped in the middle, his eyes flashing coldly. Mu Qing turned to Qin Feiyong and roared, If you dare to mess around, I promise I won't let you off. Qin Feiyong said with a smile, That depends on your performance. What do you want me to do? Mu Qing said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyong said, Use your heavenly eye to find Zhang Jin's whereabouts. I can't do it. Mu Qing shook his head. Why? Qin Feiyong frowned. Mu Qing said, The heavenly eye is not omnipotent. Before looking, I have to know what he looks like, and I have never seen Zhang Jin. Qin Feiyong said suspiciously, Then how did you find Lu Xingchen in the Nine Nether Underworld? It seems that you haven't seen Lu Xingchen at that time, right? How do you know that I haven't seen him? Mu Qing sneered. When did you see him? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Mu Qing said, You want to know? I won't tell you. It seems that I have to make a move. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and Chong Shui appeared. Stop. Mu Qing's face changed and he quickly shouted, I'll tell you, it's because of a divine artifact. A divine artifact? Qin Feiyong was stunned and asked, The Gate of Time and Space. No. It's another divine artifact of the Mu family. This divine artifact was made by his lord himself. When it was made, his lord added his blood into it, so when his lord woke up, the divine artifact would have some reaction. The Mu family relied on this divine artifact to find his lord. You also know that with the Gate of Time and Space, we can go in and out of any place at will, so before entering the Nine Nether Underworld, I had already seen Lu Xingchen. Mu Qing said. Amazing. There's actually another divine artifact. Chapter 1192. Mu Qing snorted. You can't even begin to imagine the power of the Mu family. Qin Feiyong smiled. Don't worry. This divine artifact will fall into my hands sooner or later. Mu Qing's face was suddenly filled with anger. How dare he say that? Was he looking down on the Mu family? Qin Feiyong took out a spiritual sea pill and threw it to Mu Qing. Don't talk nonsense. Hurry up and repair your Qi Si. Mu Qing grabbed the spirit sea pellet and gloomily glanced at Qin Feiyong. Then, he threw the spirit sea pellet into his mouth and said, It's still the same as before. If I haven't seen him before, I won't be able to find his location. That's easy. Qin Feiyong chuckled. His battle chi surged, and Zhang Jin's figure immediately condensed in the void. Mu Qing was annoyed. Couldn't he tell that he didn't want to help? Why did he have to force him? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly. Can you do it now? Mu Qing said, If he changes his appearance, I can't find him either. Swish. Qin Feiyong stepped forward, grabbed Mu Qing's neck, and sneered. Are you challenging my patience? If you can't find him after changing his appearance, then how did you find me when I changed my appearance? Mu Qing's pupils shrank. I'm telling you, don't play tricks with me again. Otherwise, you and Lu Xingchen will die today. Qin Feiyong smiled coldly, let go of Mu Qing, and left the castle. Black Dragon Pool. The mountain range stretched up and down, and all kinds of fierce beasts ran rampant in the mountains. Qin Feiyong rose into the air and landed on the cliff of a mountain, looking down at the mountains below. Every time he entered the imperial capital, he would come here. Unknowingly, this place had become his foothold in the imperial capital. He pondered for a moment. With a wave of his hand, he summoned Yan Wei and Lu Hong from the ancient castle. The three of them worked together to cut down wood and gather materials. In less than an hour, they built a brand new wooden building on the mountain peak. Qin Feiyong stood in front of the small wooden house and nodded with satisfaction. He smiled and said, "This will be our home in the capital from now on." Yan Wei and Lu Hong looked at each other and smiled. "Since it's a home, we should decorate it well," Lu Hong said with a smile. She then turned around and flew down the mountain. What is she going to do? Yan Wei was suspicious. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly and said, "It's a woman's nature to love beauty. She must have gone to find those flowers and plants to decorate this place." Yan Wei shook his head and smiled. Wang. At this moment, the image crystal began to move. Qin Feiyong took out the image crystal. A shadow appeared. It was Fatso. Fatso said, "Mu Qing's Sea of Qi has been repaired." Got it. Qin Feiyong nodded and turned off the image crystal. With a wave of his hand, Mu Qing immediately appeared beside him. "You are really leisurely and elegant." Glancing at the small wooden house, Mu Qing smiled coldly. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "You can come here often if you have time in the future. I'm afraid you won't have the chance." "Don't worry. There will definitely be a chance," Mu Qing said meaningfully. Wisps of strange light appeared in his eyes. After a while, the light in his eyes dissipated. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Zhang Jin is in the fragrant moon brothel. He is sitting in a corner of the hall." "Which fragrant moon brothel?" Qin Feiyong asked. The fragrant moon brothel had many branches in the imperial capital. "The first district," Lu Xingchen said. Qin Feiyong asked, "Did he change his appearance?" "Yes." Mu Qing waved his hand. A middle-aged man appeared in the void in front of him. He said, "This is his current appearance. You can even see his current appearance. Your all-seeing eye is really powerful. It's a pity that you can't inherit the fighting soul." Qin Feiyong sighed. Mu Qing's face was immediately filled with anger. Because as long as he was not a fool, he could understand the meaning of these words. Obviously, he was thinking about his all-seeing eye. Qin Feiyong laughed and sent Mu Qing to the castle. Fatso immediately destroyed his Sea of Qi. "Fatso, you just wait. Sooner or later, I will make you kneel and beg for mercy." Mu Qing was furious. This was the third time that his Sea of Qi had been destroyed. When had he ever been treated like this? Still arrogant? Just wait. Fat Lord will make you kneel and beg for mercy now. Fatso laughed evilly and went up to punch and kick him again. For a moment, the miserable howls in the castle were incessant. Outside, Qin Feiyong waited for a while. When Lu Hong did not come back, he took out the image crystal. Lu Hong's image soon appeared. Lu Hong was standing in a jungle, holding all kinds of wild flowers in her hands. Qin Feiyong said, "Old Yan and I are going to the fragrant moon brothel. Stay here and don't run around." "Have you found Zhang Jin?" Lu Hong asked. Qin Feiyong nodded. "Then you guys be careful," Lu Hong warned. Qin Feiyong smiled and turned off the image crystal. He took out 2 illusory pills, one for Yan Wei and the other for himself. After a simple disguise, the two opened the portal and descended in front of the fragrant moon brothel. The fragrant moon brothel was located next to the central square of the first district. The location was very good, and the streets were full of traffic. The fragrant moon brothel was also the largest brothel in the imperial capital, so there were many people coming in and out. Moreover, most of them were the children of wealthy families, people of great wealth and status. Qin Feiyong did not enter the fragrant moon brothel immediately. Instead, He walked along the street and looked at the central square not far away. The scene of him being taken to the central square and beheaded in public was still vivid in his mind. At that time, if it were not for the mysterious madam and the Mu family's help, he should be dead. If he was really dead, many people would wake up laughing in their dreams. Yan Wei looked at the central square and sighed secretly. He smiled and said, "Let's go in." Qin Feiyang nodded. The two entered the fragrant moon brothel. Inside, there were singing and dancing, and smoke lingered. The women's moans and the men's laughter were intertwined, forming a kind of extravagant and luxurious atmosphere. Everyone came to this kind of brothel, naturally, not to find true love, but for the pleasure and sense of superiority in their hearts. Looking at all this, Qin Feiyang's heart was full of disgust. Whether it was the men or the women here, they have been devoured by desire. They thought they were great. They were rich. They were powerful. They were beautiful. But in fact, they were just a group of vermin. "Two guests. Do you have a reservation in advance?" A waiter came up and looked at Qin Feiyang and asked with a smile. Qin Feiyang looked at the waiter, then looked at the hall. His eyes suddenly locked on a corner. He saw a middle-aged man, sitting alone, drinking silently. He looked out of place with the other people in the hall. Qin Feiyang pointed to the middle-aged man and looked at the waiter with a smile. "We have an appointment with him, you go ahead, we can go there by ourselves." "That's good. If you need anything, just let me know," the waiter said with a smile, and then he went to the next guest. Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei looked at each other and walked toward the middle-aged man. "Little brother, do you want to have a drink? Little brother, come and have fun for a while, I promise I will serve you well." Along the way, women kept coming out to show off, wearing revealing clothes and heavy makeup. They were very slutty. But Qin Feiyang ignored them, went straight to the middle-aged man's table, and sat opposite him. Yan Wei stood behind him. The middle-aged man was drinking. Seeing Qin Feiyang and Qin Feiyang come uninvited, he immediately raised his eyebrows, put down the wine glass, and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Are you in the wrong place?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "This hall is already full. Brother is the only one here, so I came over to make do. I won't disturb you, will I?" "Make do?" The middle-aged man's face twitched, and he said, "It's not to the extent of disturbing, but I don't like to sit with strangers. Please find another place." "Brother, you are really a cold person. However, regarding Lu Xingchen, I wonder if you're interested in knowing more about him?" Qin Feiyang chuckled. The middle-aged man stood up suddenly, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. "Don't get excited. This is Imperial City. It won't be good for you if you attract the attention of others, right, Zhang Jin?" Qin Feiyang said with a smile, his eyes full of mockery. Zhang Jin's pupils constricted, and he returned to his seat, sending a voice transmission. "Who are you? Why do you know so much?" "Who am I?" Qin Feiyang smiled playfully and said indifferently, "You should be able to guess." Zhang Jin frowned and sized up Qin Feiyang. All of a sudden, his eyes trembled and he thought to himself, "You are Qin Feiyang? Are you surprised? Are you surprised?" Qin Feiyang chuckled. Zhang Jin's face suddenly darkened, and he said, "How did you find me? One must know." He had changed his appearance now, and even the people around him might not be able to recognize him, but Qin Feiyang could find him at once. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, "I have to thank Mu Qing. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't have been able to find you." "Mu Qing?" Zhang Jin was shocked, and he thought to himself, "Mu Qing is the young master of the Mu family. How could he help you?" "You actually know?" Qin Feiyang was surprised and said, "So, Mu Qing has actually seen you?" "We have seen each other a long time ago," Zhang Jin said in a deep voice. "This bastard dares to play tricks with me." A cold light flashed in Qin Feiyang's eyes. He grabbed a clean wine cup, picked up the wine pot in front of Zhang Jin, poured a cup, and tasted it leisurely. Zhang Jin's face was gloomy, and he said, "Where is Lu Xingchen? What do you know?" Qin Feiyang drank and said with a smile, "Compared to Lu Xingchen, you should be more concerned about Ren Duxing." Zhang Jin was surprised. "It seems that Ren Duxing hasn't contacted you these days, but thinking about it, with Elder Qin in the pagoda, he can't find you even if he wants to," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Zhang Jin clenched his hands and said to himself, if you have something to say, just say it. Don't be so sarcastic. Although Ren Duxing has the upper hand in the battle with the state preceptor, there is not much left of his divine consciousness. According to my speculation, there should be only one wisp left. Qin Feiyang said. Zhang Jin's heart suddenly sank. Qin Feiyang said again, also, Dongqing and the 4 sacred beasts have died in my hands. What? Zhang Jin's eyes trembled. Chapter 1193. That's right. Look at my cultivation. Isn't there a change as well? Qin Feiyang said again. Zhang Jin took a look. His face was filled with disbelief. He had actually broken through to 7-star Battle Saint. There were even signs of him breaking through to 8-star Battle Saint. Qin Feiyang chuckled. Not only me, old Yen behind me has also broken through to 3-star Battle Emperor. Yan Wei's face was also full of smiles. Zhang Jin raised his head and looked at Yan Wei. The disbelief in his eyes was even more intense. If he remembered correctly, this person had just broken through to 2-star Battle Emperor at Iron Ox Town. How long had it been? How did they do it? Qin Feiyang smiled and transmitted his voice. We ate the Saint Lion's divine meat. What? Zhang Jin's body and mind trembled. A divine beast was actually reduced to a meal on a plate? Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. It's a pity that you're not here. Otherwise, I would also have a share of you. Hearing this, Zhang Jin was not happy. Instead, his scalp went numb. This was because he heard a shocking murderous intent in that calm tone. You're here to kill me? He stared at Qin Feiyang vigilantly. Qin Feiyang said, don't be nervous. I'm not here to kill you. Zhang Jin said. Then why are you here? Qin Feiyang smiled. I'm here to see you commit suicide. I don't think I need to do anything in this situation. You? Zhang Jin glared at him. Committing suicide was equivalent to asking him to commit suicide. Now, Yan Wei had the ability to kill him in an instant, but he still asked him to do so. It was obvious that he wanted to humiliate him. He suppressed his anger and said gloomily, where is Lu Xingchen now? Lu Xingchen and Mu Qing are in my hands. Qin Feiyang said. Damn it! Zhang Jin cursed in his heart. Could it be that all his hard work these past few days had been in vain? Bang! He rolled his eyes and suddenly lifted the table and shouted, Qin Feiyang is here. At the same time, he got up and ran outside without looking back. Qin Feiyang. The fragrant moon brothel immediately fell into dead silence. But in the next moment, the brothel. Where is Qin Feiyang? Everyone looked around the hall in surprise. It's him. Zhang Jin, who was running away, pointed at Qin Feiyang and shouted, boom! Swish! At that moment, powerful auras erupted from the fragrant moon inn. Half of the people in the hall immediately surrounded Qin Feiyang, their eyes filled with greed. Back then, the emperor's right, the emperor. Calm. None of them wanted to miss this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. However, facing all of this, Qin Feiyang didn't panic in the slightest. He swept his gaze over the crowd that surged over and said indifferently, do I look like Qin Feiyang to you all? No. Then which one of you is Qin Feiyang? Everyone slammed on the brakes and stopped. They looked at Qin Feiyang and Yan Wei suspiciously. Qin Feiyang pointed at Zhang Jin and said with a smile, he is Qin Feiyang. Just now, he was a thief crying thief. Swish. In an instant, everyone looked at Zhang Jin in unison. At this moment, Zhang Jin had already fled to the entrance. When he heard Qin Feiyang's words, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. A thief crying thief? Was there a mistake? He was Qin Feiyang. How could he say such words in such a dignified manner? Was he shameless? But now, he did not dare to stay for a moment. He ran out of the fragrant moon restaurant as if he was running for his life. Qin Feiyang said with a smile, did you see that? He is guilty and ran away directly. Catch him and you can become a duke. Hurry up and chase him. Yan Wei shouted. Hurry up and chase him. A group of people immediately rushed to the door. Wait, we haven't paid the bill yet. Several waiters blocked the door, looking very anxious. Get lost. But at this time, who was in the mood to pay the bill? The few people who rushed to the front directly punched the waiters away. A group of people rushed out of the Fragrant Moon restaurant. Qin Feiyong and Yan Wei looked at each other and smiled. They also got up and walked out of the Fragrant Moon restaurant. Qin Feiyong is there. Stop him. Don't let him escape. A young man in purple found Zhang Jin in the crowd and suddenly roared, alarming the people on the street. What? Qin Feiyong. Who is Qin Feiyong? Everyone was bewildered. It's him. Someone pointed at Zhang Jin and roared. Don't run. A few big men standing near Zhang Jin immediately pounced on him. The strength of these people was only at the level of a war master. Get lost. Zhang Jin was extremely violent. With a palm strike, battle chi roared in all directions. Boom. Ah. Not only did those big men die on the spot, but the surrounding buildings also collapsed. The streets were in a mess. It was very lively. But there were too many people around. Another group of people rushed forward crazily. Zhang Jin was anxious and angry and roared, I am not Qin Feiyong, that person just now is, please believe me. Since you are not Qin Feiyong, then why are you running? In the crowd. Yan Wei coldly snorted and shouted, Don't talk nonsense with him, quickly catch him and become a marquis. Upon hearing the two words marquis, everyone's eyes turned red. Bastard! Zhang Jin cursed and opened a teleportation gate. However, just as the teleportation gate opened, it was shattered by the few people at the front. You're courting death. Zhang Jin was enraged. The Emperor's might roared out, imprisoning all directions. Following closely. With a wave of his hand, the battle chi turned into tens of thousands of strands. Like sharp arrows, they shot out in all directions, instantly killing a large number of people. The entire street was dyed red with blood. So strong. He seems to have broken through to the War King. Everyone panicked and did not dare to move forward. They stopped in the distance and surrounded Zhang Jin. In the crowd, Yan Wei looked at Zhang Jin, a cold glint flashed in his eyes, and sent a sound transmission to Qin Feiyong. Do you need me to make a move? No need. Qin Feiyong waved his hand. Such a big matter must have alarmed the imperial palace. He believed that a big shot would arrive very soon. Moreover, this was the first district, where experts were as common as the clouds. Zhang Jin alone did not have the ability to jump around. Qin Feiyong die. As expected. A cold shout rang out. A middle-aged woman with a plump figure walked out from the crowd, ignoring Zhang Jin's emperor's might, and walked towards him step by step. Zhang Jin's pupils shrank. Be sensible, don't force us to make a move. Another man in black walked out from the other side of the crowd, his entire body emitting a powerful emperor's might. You won't be able to escape today. After the two of them, one after another appeared. Finally, there were over 100 people walking towards Zhang Jin. These people all had the cultivation of a 1-star war king. There were even 2 2-star war kings. It's just a street, and there are actually so many war kings hidden? Yan Wei's pupils shrank, his eyes filled with fear. Qin Feiyong said, That's why, don't underestimate the imperial city, especially the imperial city. The experts hidden here will make you feel despair. Zhang Jin glanced at the middle-aged woman and the others, and shouted hysterically. I've already said, I'm not Qin Feiyong, why don't you believe me? The man in black sneered. If it were me, I wouldn't take the initiative to admit it. Stupid, ignorant, idiot. Zhang Jin was flustered and exasperated. Boom! However, what responded to him was the anger of the man in black and the others. They all released their emperor's might and pounced towards Zhang Jin. This was over 100 emperor's might. Moreover, there were 2 2-star war kings' emperor's might, and Zhang Jin was only a 1-star war king. Poof! With a loud bang, Zhang Jin spurted out blood on the spot. His body and mind trembled, and his face turned pale. Don't go too far. He formed a seal with both hands, and his battle chi surged. A palm-sized square seal instantly appeared in the sky. Mountain-shattering seal. With a loud roar, the square seal soared into the sky and expanded in the wind. In the blink of an eye, a square seal that was hundreds of feet tall appeared, and its terrifying aura shook the sky. Following closely, Zhang Jin turned into a stream of light and rushed into the sky like lightning. Standing above the square seal, he raised his hand and pressed down. Boom! The square seal suddenly sank, and with a monstrous ferocious aura, it suppressed the man in black and the others below. Perfect battle art. I don't think I've heard of him mastering such a battle art before. Every time he returns, his strength and methods will soar by a large margin. This child really can't be underestimated. Everyone discussed in low voices. The man in black and the others' expressions were also extremely heavy. This square seal was not a threat to them. What worried them was the divine art. Because now everyone in the imperial capital already knew that Qin Feiyong had mastered several powerful divine arts. The middle-aged woman said, "The people from the imperial palace will definitely be here soon, we just need to delay him." The others nodded and began to perform their battle arts. There were perfect battle arts. There were superior battle arts. For a time, the place was filled with howling winds, and battle chi rolled in all directions. Kill! Hundreds of battle arts rushed into the sky, like a meteor shower, continuously bombarding that square seal. The rumbling sound was deafening. Waves of destructive battle fluctuations surged and pounced in all directions. Quickly retreat! When the spectators in the distance saw this scene, they immediately turned around and fled. But there were also people who could not escape. They were swept away by the air wave, torn to pieces, and blood stained the sky. A large portion of the buildings below had been destroyed. Gotcha! All of a sudden, that square seal shattered. Zhang Jin was so angry that blood spurted wildly, and like a meteorite he flew out. Qin Feiyong die. Another unfamiliar burly man rushed out of the crowd, rushed in front of Zhang Jin like lightning, and punched Zhang Jin's chest. Ah! Zhang Jin screamed in pain, his blood-stained body, like a cannonball, shot into the sky. This punch was fatal. It had directly shattered his heart. Haha! Qin Feiyong is mine, the Marshal Marquis position is also mine, none of you can take it away. The burly man glanced at the black-clothed man and the others, and then rushed towards Zhang Jin excitedly. He had been here since early in the morning. But he knew that if he went out early, he would definitely not be able to snatch it from others. So he had been hiding in the crowd, waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Bastard! We can't let him succeed! The middle-aged woman shouted. The black-clothed man and the others also had gloomy expressions. They actually let this person take the initiative. Whoosh! The group of people used their supportive battle arts one after another and rushed towards Zhang Jin. Yan Wei shook his head and laughed. Being beaten by so many war emperors, I have to say that he is really pitiful. This is what he deserves. Chapter 1194. High up in the sky. Zhang Jin was in despair. His current cultivation was indeed much stronger than before. However, with so many combat emperors surrounding him, he did not even have the chance to escape, let alone fight. Qin Feiyong, go and die. The burly man rushed in front of Zhang Jin and threw a punch at Zhang Jin's lower abdomen. Bastard, with just you? Zhang Jin was so angry that he laughed. A black eagle rushed out from behind him. Its body was dozens of meters long and it was ferocious. It was his fighting soul. Chirp! The black eagle screeched and its sharp claws grabbed the burly man's head and crushed it on the spot. Isn't his fighting soul the purple gold dragon soul, sword soul and fire lotus? Why is it the black eagle? Does he have a fourth fighting soul? The black-robed man and the rest were bewildered. Don't care how many fighting souls he has. Let's kill him first. The middle-aged woman shouted. Roar! Clang! The black-robed man and the rest also activated their fighting souls. There were beast souls and weapon souls. Kill! The black-robed man and the rest roared in unison. Immediately, all the fighting souls charged towards Zhang Jin. The black eagle in front of Zhang Jin was instantly crushed. Looking at the group of fighting souls, Zhang Jin was disheartened and he roared, Qin Feiyong, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. Before he finished his words, the black-robed man and the rest of the fighting souls drowned Zhang Jin. I'm afraid you won't even have the chance to become a ghost. Qin Feiyong sneered. Facing the attack of so many fighting souls, even he did not have the confidence to survive, let alone Zhang Jin. He retracted his gaze and looked at Yan Wei. Let's go. Yan Wei nodded and opened a space portal. Boom. At this moment, a terrifying aura descended. Following that, an old man in white appeared in the void above. It was the Grand Tutor. Behind him was a large group of enforcers. The Grand Tutor looked at the black-robed man and the rest and asked expressionlessly, "Where is Qin Feiyong?" "Over there." The group of people pointed to the sky, their hearts filled with excitement. They worked together to kill Qin Feiyong. Although they couldn't be conferred the title of Marquis, they would definitely receive a generous reward. After all, there were so many people. If they were all conferred the title of Marquis, wouldn't the imperial capital be in chaos? The imperial preceptor raised his head and saw a badly mutilated corpse falling from the sky. Originally, he was quite happy. But when he saw Zhang Jin's corpse, his face sank. The man in black smiled obsequiously and said, "Lord Imperial Tutor, what are you going to reward us with?" The others did not want to be outdone and began to claim credit. Reward? The state preceptor was instantly enraged. He roared, "Look carefully. Is he Qin Feiyong?" The black-clothed man and the others were stunned. They raised their heads and looked at Zhang Jin's corpse. One's appearance can change, but the power of one's bloodline will never change. Qin Feiyong's blood is purple gold dragon blood, but the blood on this person's body. Open your eyes wide and look carefully. Is it just ordinary blood? The imperial preceptor shouted in anger. Purple gold dragon blood. The eyes of the black-clothed man and the others trembled. It was only at this moment that the people in the city below came to a sudden realization. That's right. Qin Feiyong's blood is purple gold dragon blood, and his blood is purple gold. And this person's blood is normal, which means that he is not Qin Feiyong. Then who is the real Qin Feiyong? It's the two people just now. Find them quickly. They must still be here. The people roared again and looked around. At the same time, in the crowd, Qin Feiyong coldly glanced at the imperial preceptor, then turned around and entered the portal with Yan Wei without looking back. They are here. Just as they entered the portal, someone next to them discovered them and immediately shouted. Everyone looked over, including the imperial preceptor and the law enforcers. As soon as he saw that Qin Feiyong had entered the portal, the black-clothed man immediately shouted, "One of them must be Qin Feiyong, stop them quickly." Hearing this, the people around immediately activated their battle chi and blasted it toward the portal. The imperial preceptor and the law enforcers also moved and rushed toward the portal like lightning. Humph! Yan Wei's cold snort sounded in the portal. Immediately after, a burst of Emperor's aura roared out, and the battle chi that surged from all directions instantly dissipated. Old bastard, I'm sorry, you're a step too late again. Remember to come earlier next time. Qin Feiyong's voice filled with ridicule sounded from the teleportation gate. Then, Qin Feiyong and Yan Wei's figures disappeared in the portal. All of this happened in an instant, even though it seemed slow. The imperial preceptor rushed over and smashed the portal with a palm. But after waiting for a long time, he did not see Qin Feiyong and Yan Wei appear, and his face gradually darkened. Lord, don't worry. Although we haven't caught him yet, at least we've confirmed that he's in the imperial capital. As long as he's in the imperial capital, he won't be able to escape. A law enforcer said respectfully. Won't be able to escape. The imperial preceptor muttered to himself, and his face became more and more ferocious. Suddenly, he slapped the law enforcer's face and said angrily, "Since you're so capable, why is he still at large? Lord, please spare my life." The law enforcer immediately knelt on the ground. The imperial preceptor glanced at him coldly, then looked at the other law enforcers and said, "Do you all think so too?" Everyone lowered their heads and was incomparably nervous. I'll repeat it again. Don't underestimate Qin Feiyong anymore. He's no longer the 14th prince of the past. The current him is strong enough to crush all of you into pieces. So, it's best not to be arrogant and think that you can easily catch him, understand? The imperial preceptor roared. The group of law enforcers trembled and said respectfully, "We'll remember." A bunch of idiots. The imperial preceptor snorted, flicked his sleeves, and rose into the air, disappearing from everyone's sight. At this moment, the group of law enforcers heaved a sigh of relief. We didn't even notice such an important piece of information like the purple gold dragon blood. How careless. Yes, at that time, we were blinded by desire, and made a big fool of ourselves. It's okay to make a fool of ourselves, but I'm afraid that the imperial preceptor will vent his anger on us. Then, we'll be in big trouble. The man in black and the group of law enforcers looked at each other, feeling bitter in their hearts. Black Dragon Pool. Above the small wooden building, Qin Feiyong and Yan Wei appeared out of thin air. When they looked down, the two of them were stunned on the spot. They had not left for long, but now the mountain peak had changed greatly. Originally, this mountain peak, except for the small wooden building, was overgrown with shrubs, rocks, and weeds. But now, these were all gone. Instead, there was a fragrant garden. Those rocks were also used reasonably, piled up into rockery, standing on the mountain peak in picturesque disorder, which was quite ornamental. In short, now, this mountain peak had become a private back garden. At this moment, Lu Hong was still busy, sweating profusely. There was also a large pile of unplanted wildflowers next to her. Lu Hong, this child, is really good to you. She knows that you can't live here for a long time, but she still does her best to take care of it, Yan Wei said with a smile. In terms of age, he was indeed qualified to call Lu Hong a child. Qin Feiyong said, I'll remember all the good she has done for me. Not only do you have to remember, but you also have to take action, Yan Wei said with a smile, with a rather ambiguous expression. When did you become so gossipy? Qin Feiyong looked at him with dissatisfaction. I'm not gossiping, I'm asking you to cherish it. In this world, there are very few good women, let alone this kind of woman who is so devoted to you and is so considerate. Don't wait until you lose it to feel heartache, Yan Wei said with a sound transmission. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Yan Wei thought to himself, I'm giving you advice as someone who has been through this. Okay, I know. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes at him. At this time, Lu Hong looked up at the two of them and said with a smile, What are you whispering about? Nothing. Yan Wei waved his hand and smiled. Then he patted Qin Feiyong's shoulder meaningfully, flew to Lu Hong's side, and said, Is there anything I can help you with? Lu Hong glanced around, pointed to the pile of unplanted wildflowers, and said, Help me classify those flowers. Okay. Yan Wei immediately squatted on the ground and busied himself. Lu Hong asked, Is it settled? Yan Wei nodded and said with a smile, It's settled. I even saw the Imperial Preceptor. He's probably mad now. It's best if he dies of anger, Lu Hong said. Yan Wei was slightly stunned, and then he couldn't help shaking his head and laughing. Looking at the two of them talking and laughing, Qin Feiyong also smiled from the bottom of his heart. Swish. Then, he went to the castle. Seeing that Lu Xingchen was still in a coma, he frowned slightly, turned to Fatso and asked, Has he ever woken up? No. Fatso shook his head. How serious a blow did he suffer at Elder Qin's place that he could be in a coma for so long? Qin Feiyong was puzzled. Do you really think that he can make me unconscious? But before his voice died away, a familiar voice sounded. Then, Lu Xingchen opened his eyes, got up, and looked at Qin Feiyong playfully. Mu Qing immediately ran to Lu Xingchen's side. What do you mean? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Mu Qing sneered and said, Isn't it obvious? His Highness is pretending. Pretending? Qin Feiyong was stunned. That's right. Why don't you think about who is standing in front of you now? Mu Qing said, her eyes full of sarcasm. Lu Xingchen raised his eyebrows and said, I told you not to talk to Brother Qin with such an attitude. Hearing this, Mu Qing looked a little unhappy, but she didn't dare to disobey and kept silent. Qin Feiyong glanced at Mu Qing, looked at Lu Xingchen, frowned and asked, What's going on? Viper and the others also woke up from their cultivation and looked at Lu Xingchen in surprise. Lu Xingchen smiled faintly, pointed to his head, and said, Now the soul in the sea of consciousness, which is Lu Xingchen's soul, has merged with my divine sense. With the strength of my divine sense, how could a mere Elder Qin knock me out? Divine sense. Qin Feiyong's body shook violently. He actually neglected such an important point. Mu Tianyang could seize Ran Duxing's body and use his divine sense to fight with the Imperial Preceptor and revive the divine artifact. Lu Xingchen could also do it. In other words, Lu Xingchen was now fully capable of killing him. Chapter 1195. Fatso and the others couldn't help but become vigilant. This was because Lu Xingchen's divine sense could kill all of them as easily as blowing off dust. Don't be nervous. If I really wanted to kill you, I would have done it long ago. I wouldn't have waited until now. Lu Xingchen smiled faintly. Qin Feiyang motioned for Fatso and the others to continue cultivating. Then, he left the castle with Lu Xingchen and Mu Qing. Although Lu Xingchen said that he had no malicious intentions, leaving Lu Xingchen in the castle was still a threat. Seeing Qin Feiyang appear with Lu Xingchen and Mu Qing, Yan Wei and Lu Hong couldn't help but be slightly stunned. At the same time, Lu Xingchen glanced at the top of the mountain and said with a smile, "It's arranged very well." "What's going on?" Lu Hong and Mu Qing walked to Qin Feiyang's side and asked in a low voice. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "It's nothing. Go about your business." The two looked at each other and the suspicion in their hearts grew stronger. But they didn't ask any more and turned to leave. Qin Feiyang glanced at the top of the mountain and suddenly saw a carved stone tea table and several stone stools beside the small wooden building. Obviously, this must have been specially prepared by Lu Hong for him. "Let's go over and sit," Qin Feiyang said faintly. He turned and walked to the tea table and sat opposite Lu Xingchen. Mu Qing stood respectfully behind Lu Xingchen. Qin Feiyang looked at Lu Xingchen and said faintly, "Tell me, what do you want to do?" Lu Xingchen said, "Cooperation." Qin Feiyang was surprised. Lu Xingchen said with a smile, "I did all this to let you see my sincerity." "Good faith." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "Not bad. That day here, you saw through my identity. I deliberately allowed myself to be captured. Because I knew that you would come to save me sooner or later. I was the one who told you Ren Duxing's whereabouts on purpose. It's just that I didn't expect you to be so powerful that you actually managed to kill Dong Qing and the 4 Saint Beasts." Lu Xingchen said. Qin Feiyang asked, "Then do you hate me very much now?" "Hate?" Lu Xingchen shook his head and smiled. "To be honest, I do hate you a little. After all, the 4 great sacred beasts have followed me for so many years. They are loyal and devoted. But compared to your value, I choose to forget this hatred." "My value?" Qin Feiyang frowned. "That's right. I can foresee that in the future, your achievements will not be inferior to Qin Batian. Therefore, if we cooperate, we will definitely achieve great things." Lu Xingchen said with a smile. Qin Feiyang was puzzled. "There are so many people in the great Qin Empire. Why do you have to cooperate with me?" "It's very simple. You have obtained Qin Baishan's legacy. Of course, the biggest reason is that I admire you. Thinking back to when you were young, you were a blazing sun in the imperial capital with a boundless future. But suddenly, there was a drastic change and you became a homeless, pitiful worm. If it were someone else, they would have long given up on themselves. But you didn't. Step by step, you have relied on your own efforts and perseverance to get to where you are today. Therefore, I admire you." Lu Xingchen said. "But you have to know that our ambitions are different. What I want to do is to protect the empire of the Great Qin Empire. But you want to overturn the empire of the Great Qin Empire. Do you think it is possible for 2 people like them to cooperate?" Qin Feiyang said indifferently. "Why is there no possibility of cooperation? Although as a descendant of the Qin clan, protecting the Great Qin Empire is your duty, you have to see the reality clearly. Is it worth your protection?" Lu Xingchen said. Qin Feiyang said, "Public is public, private is private. I don't want to mix them up." Mu Qing snorted coldly. "My lord, I told you long ago that he is stubborn, but you didn't believe me. Now you see." "Shut up." Lu Xingchen glared at him, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, "I can take a step back." "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang said. Lu Xingchen said, "Let's work together to get rid of some obstacles, such as the state preceptor and the current emperor." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, and he said, "Ren Duxing told me that Zhuge Mingyang and the first prince are brothers. Is this true?" Lu Xingchen said, "I can only tell you this if you agree to cooperate with me." "You're using this to blackmail me?" Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. Lu Xingchen said with a faint smile, "Do you want to know?" Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed, then he nodded and said, "Okay, we'll cooperate. But our cooperation is only to get rid of those obstacles." "Isn't that a win-win situation?" Lu Xingchen smiled. Qin Feiyang said, "Tell me now. I know the truth." "But at this time," Mu Qing said, "you're not trustworthy. If you say you want to cooperate now, You might go back on your words later. So, you have to write it down. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows, looked up at him and said lightly, "Are you qualified to speak here?" "You." Mu Qing glared at him. "Enough." Lu Xingqian shouted impatiently. Mu Qing shrank his neck and immediately fell silent, but his face was full of displeasure. Lu Xingqian looked at Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, "Brother Qin, I believe in your character." "Then cut the crap," Qin Feiyong said. Lu Xingqian said, "The first prince and Zhuge Mingyang are indeed brothers." Qin Feiyong suddenly stood up. Although he was mentally prepared, he still couldn't help but be surprised. "Don't get excited. Sit down and listen to me." Lu Xingqian smiled. Qin Feiyong returned to the stone bench and tried to control his emotions. He silently looked at Lu Xingqian. Why would Zhuge Mingyang assist the first prince? This question not only puzzles you, but also me. So, after you went to the Forgotten Continent, I investigated for a long time. During that time, I used a spatial divine item to follow and monitor him every day. It can be said that everything about him was under my control. Then one day, I followed Zhuge Mingyang into the Zhuge family and heard him mention the first prince to his father. Only then did I know that there was such a big secret hidden. Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyong's mind buzzed. He didn't expect it to be true. He didn't suspect Lu Xingqian. Because he understood the current Lu Xingqian. There was no need to lie to him, and he disdained to lie to him. With great difficulty, Qin Feiyong calmed down and said in a deep voice, "So Zhuge Mingyang is also the son of the current emperor?" "Wrong." Lu Xingqian waved his hand. "What?" Qin Feiyong stood up again, his face full of shock. Lu Xingqian's answer, although it seemed ordinary, hid a great mystery. Because, if Zhuge Mingyang wasn't the emperor's son, then the first prince wasn't the emperor's son. In other words, this first prince was the son of Zhuge Wuhou. Lu Xingqian said, "That's right, as you thought, the first prince is the son of Zhuge Wuhou." Boom. Hearing this, Qin Feiyong was like a bolt from the blue, his body and mind trembled, and he said in a deep voice, "If that's the case, then the current empress has an adulterous relationship with Zhuge Wuhou." Lu Xingqian laughed. "Isn't this obvious?" Not far away, Yan Wei and Lu Hong were also dumbfounded. There was actually such a thing? Mu Qing was also shocked. Obviously, she only knew about it now. This is retribution. Haha. Qin Feiyong suddenly laughed. After learning about this matter, not only did he not have the slightest bit of sympathy for the emperor, but he was also very happy. Lu Xingqian frowned. "After such a thing happened, shouldn't you feel sorry for your father?" "Feel sorry for him? Then who will feel sorry for me? He brought this upon himself, serves him right." Qin Feiyong sneered. Lu Xingqian sighed secretly. Indeed, Qin Feiyong could not be blamed for being heartless, but the emperor was too ruthless to him back then. Qin Feiyong returned to the stone bench and said, "Then is this little prince also the son of Zhuge Wuhou?" "I'm still investigating this matter, but I estimate." Lu Xingqian said this and did not continue, because Qin Feiyong already understood. If nothing unexpected happened, this little prince was definitely the son of Zhuge Wuhou and the empress. Phew. Qin Feiyong let out a long breath and asked, "Then does all of this have anything to do with the imperial preceptor?" "It's also under investigation. But what is certain is that this imperial preceptor does have ulterior motives," Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyong said, "Then the first step of our cooperation is to eliminate him." "It's not that simple. He has a divine artifact in his hands, unless I condense a complete divine soul. And after the battle with Ren Duxing, he will definitely not leave the imperial capital easily in the future. And if we make a move in the imperial capital, the situation will be very unfavorable for us," Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyong nodded. Lu Xingqian's concerns were not without reason. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong seemed to have thought of something and asked suspiciously, "What's going on with your divine sense? Why do you have to seize two bodies at the same time? And now you and Ren Duxing, are you Mu Tianyang or you?" "I will tell you about this in the future. As for me and Ren Duxing, you can think of it this way, I am still Lu Xingqian, and Ren Duxing is still Ren Duxing," Lu Xingqian said. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. What's the difference between this and not answering? he asked. Then what are you going to do next? Lu Xingchen said with a smile. Of course, I will go back to the Divine Hall and continue to investigate the little prince and the state preceptor. You dare to go back to the Divine Hall? Aren't you afraid that old Qin will harm you? Qin Feiyong sneered. Lu Xingchen said, that's why I still need you to negotiate with him. Qin Feiyong looked at him deeply and said, when I have time, I will talk to him. Lu Xingchen said, one more thing, I will take Mu Qing away later. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and said, I don't think I said I would let him go? Lu Xingchen laughed and said to Mu Qing without looking back, why don't you apologize to Brother Qin? You want me to apologize to him? Mu Qing looked at Lu Xingchen in disbelief. Lu Xingchen said, don't make me say it a second time. Mu Qing's hands were tightly clenched together. He only had hatred for Qin Feiyong in his heart, so asking him to apologize was more painful than killing him. Seeing that Mu Qing did not move, Lu Xingchen said indifferently, I can abandon the 4 sacred beasts, Dongqing, Zhongjin, I can also abandon you. Mu Qing's body trembled. He gritted his teeth and bowed to Qin Feiyong. I'm sorry. Not sincere. Qin Feiyong said indifferently. Then what do you think is sincere enough? Mu Qing raised his head and stared at Qin Feiyong. His eyes seemed to say, quit while you are ahead, don't go too far. Chapter 1196. Kneel down and apologize. Mu Qing's eyes suddenly spat out a thick flame of anger. Apologizing was already his limit. How dare he ask him to kneel down? This was too much. Don't be so shameless. With a roar, his aura erupted and he threw a punch at Qin Feiyong. You're the one who's being shameless. Qin Feiyong suddenly stood up and grabbed Mu Qing's fist. His eyes were full of coldness. At the same time, Yan Wei and Lu Hong also immediately put down what they were doing and rushed to Qin Feiyong's side, looking at Mu Qing coldly. Let go of me. Mu Qing shouted angrily and tried to break free. But Qin Feiyong's strength was so great that he couldn't move at all. Moreover, as Qin Feiyong's strength continued to increase, his fist began to break and blood gushed out. The severe pain made his face contort. And Qin Feiyong's cold eyes made him feel even more desperate. Suddenly, with a crisp crack, Mu Qing couldn't help but howl miserably. His fist was crushed into pieces. But Qin Feiyong still didn't let go. I beg you, can you let go of me? Mu Qing was scared and begged bitterly. Qin Feiyong smiled sarcastically and let go of his hand and returned to the stone bench. Lu Hong also took out a handkerchief and handed it to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong took the handkerchief and wiped the blood off his hand. He looked up at Mu Qing and said lightly, if it weren't for Lu Xingchen, you would be lying on the ground as a corpse now. Mu Qing's eyes trembled. Cut the crap and show me your sincerity. Otherwise, even if Lu Xingchen saves you today, I will do everything I can to kill you. Qin Feiyong said. Upon hearing this, Mu Qing could not help but feel a chill run down her spine. After knowing each other for so many years, how could he not understand Qin Feiyong's character? If he said it, he would definitely be able to do it. Moreover, Qin Feiyong's methods were well known to the world. Towards his enemies, there was no mercy in his eyes, only unscrupulous means. Once she was targeted by him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even if he had been hiding at home or by Lu Xingchen's side, Qin Feiyong would have found an opportunity to kill him. Fear drowned him. He couldn't help but kneel on the ground, lowered his head and said, I'm sorry. Qin Feiyong smiled disdainfully. He looked at Lu Xingchen and said, your Mu Jia's descendant is nothing more than this. Lu Xingchen frowned. He glanced at Mu Qing and then looked at Qin Feiyong. He smiled faintly and said, compared to you, he is indeed much worse. I don't like to hear flattery. I only hope that when I'm in danger in the future, you won't hide behind my back and stab me in the back. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Xingchen smiled and said, I really can't guarantee this, but during the period of our cooperation, I will definitely not do that. I hope so. Take him away. Qin Feiyong said. He could not really trust Lu Xingchen without reservation. Because he still remembered Uncle Yuan's words, there was no knowing what was in a person's heart. Goodbye. Lu Xingchen stood up, cupped his hands, smiled, and opened the portal. Mu Qing quivered and came back to her senses. She hurriedly transmitted her voice. My lord, there's still the gate of time and space. Do you think he will return the gate of time and space to you? Lu Xingqian glanced at Mu Qing and entered the portal without looking back. Mu Qing glanced at Qin Feiyang and hurriedly followed. When the portal dissipated, Yan Wei sighed and said, "This person is really unfathomable." Yes. He can still keep calm after humiliating Mu Qing like this. Just this temperament alone is enough to scare people. Lu Hong nodded. I deliberately humiliated Mu Qing. I just wanted to see Lu Xingqian's attitude. But the result disappointed me greatly. I can't figure out what he is thinking at all. Qin Feiyang rubbed his forehead. The current Lu Xingqian was far from the Lu Xingqian of the past. This was a strong opponent. He had to treat him seriously. He took out the image crystal. Buzz. Soon. Old man Qin's figure appeared. Qin Feiyang said, "There's something I want to tell you." Old man Qin's expression was solemn as he said, "It just so happens that this old man has something to tell you as well." Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and said, "You go first." Elder Qin said, "You go first." Qin Feiyang said, "Lu Xingqian has returned to the temple. Don't trouble him." You let him go? Elder Qin raised his eyebrows. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Why? Elder Qin was puzzled. Qin Feiyang said, "I still need him to help me investigate some things. And currently, he and I are in a cooperative relationship." Elder Qin was furious and shouted, "Didn't you promise me that you won't betray the great Qin Empire?" Qin Feiyang said, "Don't overreact, okay? I'm just cooperating with him for a short time. We're both taking what we need." Really? Elder Qin looked at him doubtfully. Qin Feiyang said, "I swear in the name of my ancestors." That's good. Elder Qin breathed a sigh of relief. Mu Tianyang was already difficult to deal with. If Qin Feiyang was added, then the great Qin Empire was really in danger. What do you want to say to me? Qin Feiyang asked. Elder Qin said, "Before we parted in the pagoda, didn't I tell you not to mess around in the imperial capital?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "Then why did you run to the first district and alarm the imperial preceptor?" Elder Qin said angrily. "So it's because of this." Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and said with a smile, "At that time, I was chasing after one of Mu Tianyang's lackeys." Who? Elder Qin was surprised. Qin Feiyang said, "The person who was beaten to death by everyone in the first district." Then you could have informed me. With me taking action, there wouldn't have been such a big commotion. Elder Qin was annoyed. Qin Feiyang said, "He was just a one-star combat emperor. I could have killed him without anyone knowing. Then why did you make such a big commotion?" Elder Qin was puzzled. Blood for blood. It would be too easy for him to kill him directly. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. "So you have a personal grudge with him. But don't mess around like this next time," Elder Qin said helplessly. At that time, when he received the news that Qin Feiyang had appeared in the first district, he was greatly frightened. Because no one knew better than him how terrifying the imperial capital was. There won't be a next time. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. Okay, I will be going to the spirit state tomorrow morning. Take care of yourself. Elder Qin reminded. Qin Feiyang nodded. Elder Qin was about to turn off the image crystal when Qin Feiyang suddenly thought of something and quickly said, "Wait." What's wrong? Elder Qin was suspicious. Qin Feiyang asked, "Do you know where my grandfather's home is?" Elder Qin's pupils shrank. "Why are you asking this?" Qin Feiyang sighed. "So many years have passed. I don't know how he is doing. I want to visit him." Although he had seen his grandfather when he was young, he had no impression of him now. Elder Qin shook his head. "Actually, I don't know where your grandfather's home is." And Qin Feiyang was stunned. Was there a mistake? In any case, old Qin had stayed in the imperial palace for so many years. How could he not even know where the Lu clan was? The Lu family was his grandfather's family. Old man Qin said, "This old man really didn't lie to you about this matter. The Lu family is a hidden family and has always been very low-key. The disciples of the family have never walked outside. Other than your parents, I don't think anyone knows where they are." Is it that mysterious? Qin Feiyang frowned. Is there anything else? Elder Qin asked. Qin Feiyong shook his head. Old man Qin's illusionary figure immediately disappeared. Qin Feiyong also put away the image crystal, lowered his head and fell into deep thought. All these years, he had been ignoring the Lu family. Who would have thought that after asking around, they were so mysterious? Lu Hong said, "Why don't we go ask Auntie?" "Forget it. If Mother was willing to tell me, she would have told me." Qin Feiyong shook his head. Lu Hong asked, "Then what's your next plan?" Qin Feiyong pondered for a while. "Wait for the miracle of the forgotten continent to open. But before that, there is one thing to do." "What is it?" Lu Hong was suspicious. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, looked at Yan Wei and said, "Go to the imperial city now. No matter what, you have to sneak into the inner court and gain the trust of the imperial tutor. Also, don't let anyone know about this, including Lu Xingchen and Elder Qin." "Understood." Yan Wei nodded. Lu Hong looked at Yan Wei, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Isn't this a bit too risky?" Qin Feiyong's intention was obvious. He wanted Yan Wei to hide beside the imperial tutor so that he could know the whereabouts of the imperial tutor. But the imperial tutor was not a fool. If he found out something, wouldn't Yan Wei be doomed? "It's fine. I'm still confident about this." Yan Wei smiled confidently, then thought for a while, and said, "Even if my identity is exposed, I'll leave first." "But you can't be careless," Lu Hong said. "Don't worry." Yan Wei smiled and opened a teleportation gate. He turned around and walked in. Lu Hong looked at Yan Wei's back, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "I still don't think it's right. The imperial tutor is not Fu Anshan. With old Yan's scheming and methods, how can he beat him?" "I can only say that you underestimate old Yan." Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. If he did not have confidence in old Yan, would he let Yan Wei go? Definitely not. Lu Hong pursed her lips and turned around to continue busying herself. Qin Feiyong turned and walked to the edge of the cliff. He lowered his head and pondered for a while, then sat cross-legged on the ground and closed his eyes to cultivate. At the same time, in an extremely distant place in the Grand Qin Empire, there was a vast mountain range with overlapping peaks that rose and fell continuously. In the mountains, the vegetation was lush and ferocious beasts were everywhere. At the foot of one of the giant peaks there was a village. The village covered an area of about half a mile, and there were thousands of families gathered. Those houses were all built with very ordinary wood. Around the village, there were large tracts of rice fields, vegetable gardens, pastures, and so on. The atmosphere in the village was also very harmonious. The old people gathered together in twos and threes, basking in the sun, drinking tea and chatting. The children were playing around in the mud, their laughter lingering in the air. The young and strong people were busy in the rice fields and pastures. Everyone's face was filled with a simple smile. In short. Chapter 1197. Near the village. In front of a river, an old man dressed in sackcloth sat by the river, fishing quietly. His body was bent, and he had no aura. He was like an ordinary old man, without any sense of danger. Beside the old man sat a dark-skinned young man. The young man had a dignified appearance, about 1.8 meters tall. His upper body was exposed, and he only wore a pair of large pants made of animal skin. He was also fishing with a fishing rod, but his face was full of impatience. Seeing the motionless float on the river, the young man couldn't help but say angrily, "Second Grandpa, I can accompany you fishing, but can't we find a place with fish? Look, it's been a few hours, but the float hasn't moved at all. How can we fish?" The sackcloth old man smiled. "Young man, don't be impatient. Fishing is about." Before the old man could finish, the young man waved his hand impatiently and said, All right. Don't talk to me about your great principles. I don't understand. Just tell me directly. How long do you want me to sit with you?" The old man said, "I'm cultivating your patience, understand?" The young man pouted, "My patience is about to reach its limit." The old man smiled helplessly and asked, "Then do you know why I kept you in the village all these years and didn't let you go out to explore?" "Why?" The young man didn't understand. "It's because you can't stay calm. People who can't stay calm often get into big trouble." The old man said, "Stop bullshitting. It's clearly because you're too bored and kept me in the village to accompany you. Second Grandpa, Such a promising young man with a bright future was delayed by you. Don't you feel guilty? The young man said unhappily. The old man's face couldn't help but darken. Don't be unhappy. Last time, you said yourself that you wanted me to take that artifact to the Forgotten Continent to find Qin Fei Yong and help him take care of him. But how long has it been? I'm still here fishing with you. Don't I feel bad? The young man was like a resentful woman, complaining non-stop. I said to let you go to the Forgotten Continent, but I didn't say to let you go immediately. You're the one who's impatient. The old man said indifferently. Humph. The young man snorted and said, Then you'd better not let me go for the rest of my life. At least I'll be free. You really don't know what to do. The old man shook his head weakly. Whoosh. At this moment, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a burly man cut through the sky and flew towards the village. This person was also topless. His muscles were well developed, and his skin was very dark, as if it was smeared with charcoal. Whoosh. Soon. The big man landed beside the old man and the young man. The young man immediately said in dissatisfaction, Uncle Black, you're not being nice. Why didn't you call me along when you went to have fun? The burly man's face was dark to begin with. Upon hearing the young man's words, his face darkened even more. Can't you stop talking? The old man gave him a knock on the head. He looked up at the burly man and smiled. You're back. The burly man nodded. The old man asked, Any news? Yes. Fei Yong is back. The burly man said. The young man was slightly taken aback. He stood up and said, Why is he here again? Could it be that he can't survive in the Forgotten Continent anymore? The burly man rolled his eyes at him and looked at the old man. Not long ago, in order to kill someone named Zhang Jin, he even caused a big scene in the first district. It's indeed his style. The old man shook his head and laughed. He asked curiously, Why did he want to kill Zhang Jin? This Zhang Jin is Mu Tianyang's lackey. The biggest reason is that the people of Iron Ox Town died because of Zhang Jin. In addition, he also killed many law enforcers of the inner court in the demonic Dragon Mountain in He Province. The burly man laughed. That's right. The old man nodded and was very pleased. The young man frowned and said, Uncle Black, how do you know so much? You're not happy that I said you're too young. Back then, when Qin Fei Yong left the capital, your second grandpa asked me to go to the Butterfly Valley in the spiritual state to keep an eye on him. As soon as he came back, I knew about it and have been secretly watching him. The burly man said, Second grandpa, you're too much. You asked Uncle Black to go but not me. The young man immediately looked at the old man with dissatisfaction. It was worth mentioning that neither the young man nor the old man were surprised when they heard about Mu Tianyang. The old man rolled his eyes at the young man and looked at the burly man. Where is he now? Black Dragon Swamp. The burly man said. After a moment of thought he added, But he mentioned Grandpa. What did he say? The old man was suspicious. The burly man said, He asked Elder Qin where we live and said that he wanted to visit Grandpa. Sigh. The old man sighed deeply and turned to look at the young man. Didn't you want to go out and have fun? Now that the opportunity is here, go and find him. Really? The young man immediately threw away the fishing rod and asked excitedly. Yes. The old man nodded. The young man stretched out his hand in front of the burly man and said, Then give me the divine artifact. I know it must be in your hands. Otherwise, you'll go to the spiritual state. The burly man looked at the old man. The old man chuckled. Don't even think about the divine artifact. The young man's expression froze and he said angrily, Second grandpa, you can't be like this. Didn't you agree? The old man said, That was before Fei Yong came back. Now that he's back, do you still need the divine artifact? I don't care. If you don't give it to me, I won't go. The young man crossed his arms and turned his head to the side, extremely unhappy. You're still throwing a tantrum? If you don't want to go, then don't go. No one is forcing you. Xueqi, go and call Lu Jijin here. The old man looked at the burly man and said, Okay. The burly man nodded. Wait. The young man hurriedly grabbed the burly man and looked at the old man. Why are you calling my brother here? Didn't you say that you won't go? Then I'll definitely let someone else go. Your brother is stronger than you, smarter than you, and calmer than you. In short, he's better than you in every aspect. With him helping Fei Yong, I'll have less to worry about. The old man said. The young man pursed his lips and said, Anyway, I don't agree. He's in seclusion now. You guys are not allowed to disturb him. Then what should we do? Someone has to go. After all, Fei Yong is our family. We can't just stand by and watch, right? Sigh, my head hurts. The old man rubbed his forehead with a frustrated expression. The young man rolled his eyes and said, All right, stop acting. I'll go, okay? Hee hee. The old man immediately beamed with joy. Hypocrite. The young man secretly despised him. The old man's expression turned solemn as he looked at the young man and said, Xueqi, before you go, I have to solemnly remind you not to be willful. The outside world is different from here. It's full of danger. If you're not careful, you'll lose your life. That's more fun. The young man's lips curled into a cynical smile. The old man's face darkened immediately. The young man hurriedly waved his hands and said, Okay. I'll remember it. I promise I won't act recklessly. That's more like it. The old man smiled and continued, Also, don't let Fei Yong know your identity for now. The young man nodded and asked, Anything else? The old man waved his hand and said, No, get lost. You're annoying. Hee hee. Don't speak too soon. Don't miss me so much that you'll cry. The young man smiled slyly and turned into a stream of light, disappearing into the horizon rapidly. Rascal. The old man scolded with a smile and looked at the back view of the young man with doting eyes. The burly man shook his head and smiled. He looked at the old man and said, Is it appropriate to let Xueqi go? Xueqi is indeed more suitable than him. However, he's at a critical juncture of his seclusion and can't be disturbed. As for Xueqi, he's actually not bad. It's just that he's a little mischievous. Take it as a chance for him to train. The old man smiled. The burly man nodded. Black Dragon Pool. Everything was normal. Bang. However, all of a sudden, a young man with a bare upper body descended above the Black Dragon Pool and broke the tranquility. At the peak of the mountain, Lu Hong was busy tending to the garden. When she sensed the aura of the young man, she was shocked and looked up. Immediately, she frowned. Who was this person? Why hadn't she seen him before? The young man soon noticed Lu Hong on the mountain peak. His eyes flashed and he took a step forward. He landed opposite Lu Hong and asked curiously, Little beauty, what are you doing here in the wilderness? Aren't you afraid of bumping into bad guys? Are you the bad guy you're talking about? Lu Hong looked at him warily. That was because she realized that she could not see through his cultivation. I'm so handsome. How could it be me? The young man touched his chin with a smug look. Then, he glanced at the mountain peak and said, Don't tell me you're still planning to settle down here? What does it have to do with you? Who exactly are you? Lu Hong furrowed her brows. This person did not seem to have any ill intentions. Why did he come to the Black Dragon Pool then? Did he barge in unintentionally? Or was it intentional? The young man chuckled. Of course it has to do with me because this is my territory. Shouldn't you tell me in advance that you're going to settle down here and see if I'll allow it? Are you looking for trouble? Lu Hong raised her brows. Do you still think you're in the right? Now, I order you to tear down that small wooden house immediately. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude. The young man's nose was pointed to the sky and he was overbearing. Boom. However, before he could finish his words, a terrifying saint's aura emerged and rushed toward the young man with overwhelming force. The young man suddenly raised his head and looked to the left of the cliff. He saw a young man in white standing there. His eyes were as cold as a blade. It was Qin Fei Yong. Attacking without a word. What a bad temper. The young man grumbled. Boom. A surge of saint's aura, which was not inferior to Qin Fei Yong's, rushed out of his body and collided with Qin Fei Yong's saint's aura. An 8-star battle saint. Qin Fei Yong's pupils shrank and he quickly dispersed his saint's aura. It was not because he was afraid of this young man, but because if he fought with this young man here, everything that Lu Hong had set up would be destroyed in an instant. However, the young man did not stop. His saint's aura surged and rushed toward Qin Fei Yong. Qin Fei Yong's face turned cold. He waved his hand and forcibly dispersed that surge of Saint's aura. Not bad. The young man was surprised and his eyes flickered. Chapter 1198. The young man was stunned. Someone actually dared to tell him to get lost? Interesting. He smiled playfully and flew into the sky with a monstrous aura. He hooked his finger at Qin Feiyong provocatively. However, Qin Feiyong ignored him. He glanced at him indifferently and retracted his gaze. Damn, I'm being ignored? The young man was annoyed. With a wave of his hand, his battle aura emerged and turned into a raging wave that roared toward the peak of the mountain. However, his target was not Qin Feiyong but Lu Hong. I've seen many people who are afraid of death but not many who are courting death, Qin Feiyong muttered. Suddenly, like a divine rainbow, he rushed to the front of the battle aura and threw a punch. With a loud bang, the battle aura was dispersed by his punch. However, he also retreated a few feet and his arm was numb. Despite this, the young man was still shocked. One had to know. His cultivation level was one level higher than Qin Feiyong's. However, Qin Feiyong was able to scatter his battle chi with a single punch with only his body of flesh and blood. Furthermore, he was not injured at all. Was this guy's body made of iron? No matter who you are, don't think of leaving today. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with murderous intent. Whoosh! He activated the phantom steps. In an instant, he appeared in front of the young man and threw another punch. The young man was shocked. He quickly raised his arm and threw a punch. Bang! The two fists collided with a loud bang. A destructive airwave spread out in all directions with the two of them as the center. At the same time, both of them retreated a few feet and their arms were sore. Monster! The young man swung his arms and looked at Qin Feiyong in disbelief. Not only was his body strong, but his strength was also extremely terrifying. This was the effect of eating the divine meat. Now, Qin Feiyong's body was much tougher and stronger than before. If the young man was a 7-star battle saint like Qin Feiyong, that punch would be enough to kill him. The young man shouted, "Show me your strength. That depends on whether you have the ability or not." Qin Feiyong took a step forward, the energy in his body surging. He felt unprecedentedly strong. Humph! The young man snorted coldly and charged forward without backing down. Rumble! Bang! Bang! The two of them madly collided in the void. Streams of destructive auras surged in all directions like surging tides. But, although the situation was intense, Lu Hong didn't give it a second glance. She buried her head and continued to take care of the garden. Because she had full confidence in Qin Feiyong. Although the young man's background was unknown and his cultivation was higher than Qin Feiyong's, she believed that as long as Qin Feiyong wanted to, he could kill this person at any time. He's so strong. In terms of physical strength and strength, I'm no match for him at all. As the battle reached its climax, the young man became more and more alarmed. Blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. As for his two arms, the skin and flesh were already lacerated. Then he looked at Qin Feiyong. Although he was also injured, he was much better than the young man. He was like a human-shaped tyrannosaurus that didn't know fatigue and pain. The more he fought, the braver and fiercer he became. The young man was almost unable to withstand it. Rumble! Suddenly, taking advantage of the young man's confusion, Qin Feiyong seized the opportunity and slapped the young man's chest. Puff! The young man's blood splattered 3 feet. Like a meteorite, he smashed into a giant mountain in the distance. Rumble! That giant mountain collapsed on the spot, dust and smoke rising in all directions. Haha! Qin Feiyong, I've underestimated you in the past. If you think you can defeat me like this, you're gravely mistaken. Accompanied by wild laughter, the young man rushed out of the dust and smoke. His aura was like a rainbow. Above his head, there was a black moon floating in the air. The black moon was only the size of a palm, but it exuded a shocking aura. Come and try this move of mine. The young man grinned. The black moon trembled violently and suddenly swept toward Qin Feiyong with monstrous power. A perfect battle technique? Qin Feiyong muttered. Clang! 40 sword shadows appeared out of thin air. Are you kidding me? So many of them at once? Shouldn't you follow the routine and do it bit by bit? The young man, who was still proud of himself a moment ago, was so scared that his face turned pale. Who has the mood to play tricks with you? Qin Feiyong waved his hand and the 40 sword shadows roared out in unison. Accompanied by a loud bang, the black moon instantly shattered. More than half of the sword shadows also collapsed, leaving only 6 sword shadows. However, these 6 sword shadows were enough to make the young man despair. This was because every sword shadow was equivalent to a perfect battle art. You can't play like this. The young man took to his heels and ran away in terror. However, the aura of the 6 sword shadows firmly locked onto him. No matter where he ran, the sword shadows would follow. Qin Feiyong's eyes surged with murderous intent. Although he had never seen this person before, only Lu Xingchen and Mu Qing knew that he was cultivating in the Black Dragon Pool. Therefore, he concluded that this person must be Lu Xingchen's lackey. He could not kill Lu Xingchen now. However, he would never show mercy to Lu Xingchen's lackeys, especially to this kind of arrogant person who came to cause trouble on his own accord. Haha. However, the young man suddenly laughed. Qin Feiyong frowned. How could he still laugh? The young man said without turning his head. A friendly reminder. Be careful of your surroundings. My surroundings? Qin Feiyong was taken aback. He quickly scanned the surroundings. Immediately, his pupils suddenly shrank. 4 black moons suddenly appeared in the void around him without any warning, as if they had appeared out of thin air. Moreover, these black moons were exactly the same in size and aura as the black moon that was shattered by the sword shadows. Boom! As soon as the 4 black moons appeared, they blasted Qin Feiyong's body. The terrifying lethality caused him fatal injuries in an instant. Not only was his body badly mutilated, but one of his arms was also shattered. Dragon blood poured down like a waterfall, soaking the sky. How is this possible? Hearing the commotion, Lu Hong looked up suspiciously and her face was full of disbelief. Qin Feiyong was injured? Clang! At the same time, the young man waved his hand and several more black moons appeared, crushing the 6 sword shadows. Then, he crossed his arms and looked at Qin Feiyong proudly. How did you do it? Qin Feiyong took a healing pill and looked at the young man gloomily. My battle technique is called Phantom Moon. The black moon you saw at the beginning was just an illusion. The real black moon is hidden in the void. Moreover, Phantom Moon is similar to your Gue Yuan sword technique. The number of black moons summoned will increase according to the cultivation level. Now, I can summon 40 black moons. After the young man finished speaking, his body shook. Boom! At that moment, black moons the size of a palm constantly swept out from behind the young man and floated above his head. Every black moon exuded an astonishing ferocious aura. Qin Feiyong glanced at the black moons and his face turned solemn. He did not expect this person to have mastered such a terrifying battle technique. Watch carefully. The real Phantom Moon will begin now. The young man grinned and waved his hand. The black moons floating above his head disappeared from Qin Feiyong's sight in an instant. Even their auras disappeared. I don't believe that they will really disappear. Qin Feiyong opened his eyes wide and scanned the void, not letting go of any place. However, he could not see anything in the void. They really disappeared. Boom! Immediately after, a strong sense of crisis swept over him. Behind him, 2 black moons appeared out of thin air and blasted his back like lightning. Puff! He spat out a mouthful of blood and staggered forward. Before he could react, 2 more black moons appeared in front of him and blasted his chest. Next, left, right, below, above. Black moons continued to appear and blasted his body. They were like ghosts hiding in the void. It was impossible to capture their traces and it was impossible to guard against them. The intense pain made Qin Feiyong's face contort. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. However, he was helpless. How is it? Is my illusionary moon worthy of your attention? The young man was even more proud. Qin Feiyong could not even take care of himself. How would he have the mood to care about him? Suddenly, an idea flashed in his mind. Boom! A monstrous battle intent roared out from his body. His eyes and long hair suddenly turned blood red. Battle formula. Once the battle formula was activated, the intense pain immediately disappeared. Because the battle formula could make him forget pain. Moreover, it could make him have an extremely strong defense. It could also reduce half of the lethality, which was equivalent to ignoring these injuries. In short, once the battle formula was activated, he would be immortal among those of the same level. Unless the other party also mastered the divine art. Although the young man's cultivation was higher than him by a small level, don't forget that his body had also fused with the fire of life. Therefore, these black moons could no longer cause any actual damage to him. Next, Qin Feiyong allowed those black moons to continuously bombard his body. He raised his head to look at the young man and said indifferently, "It's only a sozo." Amazing. The young man looked at Qin Feiyong in shock. That gaze was as if he was looking at a monster. Now it's my turn. Qin Feiyong formed a seal with both hands. A mighty dragon aura immediately surged out. What are you doing? Don't tell me you're going to use the divine dragon technique. Let me tell you that's shameless. The young man's eyes widened and hurriedly exclaimed. But Qin Feiyong turned a deaf ear to him. The purple gold dragon aura rolled out. A divine seal the size of a palm suddenly appeared between his hands, and a terrifying divine power instantly swept through the sky. Divine Dragon Seal. It's really the divine dragon formula. The young man panicked and hurriedly waved his hand. This is a misunderstanding, listen to my explanation. Go to hell and explain to the king of hell. Qin Feiyong smiled coldly and suddenly waved his hands. The divine dragon seal broke through the air and instantly expanded to hundreds of feet. It was like a towering mountain, crashing toward the young man. This is going to be big. The young man was secretly annoyed. If he had known that this guy's temper was so bad, he would not have provoked him even if he was beaten to death. There's no other way. I can only use my true ability. Seeing that Qin Feiyong had no intention of stopping, the young man gritted his teeth, placed his hands in front of his chest, and quickly formed a seal. Waves of flaming battle chi surged wildly. Boom! The next moment, between his hands, a palm-sized square seal was condensed. As soon as the square seal appeared, a shocking divine might surged out in all directions like a tide. Divine might. It's actually a divine art. Chapter 1199. The square seal that the young man condensed was extremely similar to the divine dragon seal. The only difference was that the divine dragon seal was purplish gold in color with a purplish gold divine dragon at the bottom. The square seal was scarlet in color and was shrouded in flames with a fire phoenix at the bottom. First stance of the fire phoenix art, fire phoenix seal. The young man hollered. The square seal expanded with the wind as well and instantly grew to a few thousand feet, charging towards the divine dragon seal with rumbling divine might. Boom! The two divine seals collided. An apocalyptic aura swept through the skies. The wind howled and the voids distorted. At the same time, snap! Accompanied by a deafening sound, the fire phoenix seal shattered. The young man's body shuddered and blood gushed out of his mouth. Although the divine dragon seal showed signs of shattering as well, its divine might was still present and it continued to charge towards the young man. It was clear that, although the fire phoenix seal was also a divine technique, it was still inferior to the divine dragon seal. Indeed, the fire phoenix art can't compare to the divine dragon art. However, I can't admit defeat just like that. Second stance. Phoenix Cry. The young man's gaze darkened and with a roar, his battle chi rumbled. Screech. In an instant, a fire phoenix streaked through the skies. The fire phoenix spread its wings and roared into the skies, sending an invisible sound wave towards the divine dragon seal. This, Qin Feiyong was stunned. The second stance of the young man, Phoenix Cry, was identical to the second stance of the divine dragon art as well. How could there be such similar divine techniques in this world? Was it a coincidence? Snap! Against the impact of the sound wave, the divine dragon seal finally shattered, turning into a rain of light that scattered through the skies. Hee hee. Qin Feiyong, how about we make a bet? If you win, I'll be your follower. If I win, you'll be my follower. The young man provoked. Qin Feiyong did not reply. With a wave of his hand, purplish gold dragon chi surged and a purplish gold divine dragon appeared with a mighty dragon might. Roar! The divine dragon coiled in the skies and let out a loud dragon roar that reverberated through the skies. Immediately, a sound wave roared out and collided with the sound wave emitted by the fire phoenix. Poof! The young man immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and his body staggered backward. The fiery phoenix above his head shattered on the spot. I'm not interested in you, but I am very interested in your deity incantation. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. The sound waves roared, instantly drowning the young man. Ah! The young man immediately howled miserably. It was as if countless sharp blades were cutting into his body, causing blood and flesh to fly everywhere. Looks like I still underestimated the divine dragon technique. The young man panicked and shouted, "Stop! I surrender!" Qin Feiyong turned a deaf ear and asked, "Who are you? What are you here for?" The young man said, "I'm here to become sworn brothers with you." Become sworn brothers? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and snorted coldly. "Even now, you still dare to fool me. You really don't know the difference between life and death." The young man said anxiously, "I'm not messing with you. I'm really here to become sworn brothers with you. Put away these sound waves and listen to my explanation." Qin Feiyong was indifferent. "If you don't stop, I'm going to die. If I die, it will only be your loss." The young man was burning with anxiety and annoyance at the same time. Why did he come here to play with fire? Qin Feiyong stared at the young man and suddenly waved his hand. The sound waves that trapped the young man instantly dissipated into nothingness. The young man hurriedly took out a healing pill and swallowed it. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. The healing pill that the young man took out actually had 6 pill veins. Swish! He took a step in front of the young man and stretched out his hand. Seeing this, the young man's expression changed. Like a frightened rabbit, he retreated dozens of feet away and waved his hand. "It's really a misunderstanding. I came with good intentions." "I really didn't see your good intentions." Qin Feiyong's gaze was aggressive. The young man sighed helplessly and said, "Let me put it this way. I'm here to cooperate with you." "You really are one of Lu Xingchen's people." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with a cold light. "One of Lu Xingchen's people?" The young man was stunned and puzzled. "What do I have to do with him? Let me tell you, I don't like him at all." Qin Feiyong was surprised. How could he be so arrogant? He said, "Do you know who Lu Xingchen is?" "Of course I do. Isn't he just Mu Tianyong's doppelganger?" The young man said. Qin Feiyong frowned. He even knew this. What was the background of this person? "Let me formally introduce myself. My name is Lu Zheng. I'm from a mysterious force." Lu Zheng said with a smile. "Surnamed Lu?" Qin Feiyong was surprised and asked, "Which mysterious force?" "It's not convenient to say. In short, the force behind me is very strong. Even you can't afford to offend it. So in the future, you'd better be polite to me." Lu Zheng said proudly. "Surnamed Lu? Is he from Grandpa's family?" Qin Feiyong muttered. Lu Zheng walked up to Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, "What do you think of my proposal?" "What proposal?" Qin Feiyong frowned. Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Become sworn brothers. I'm definitely older than you. In the future, you'll be my brother." "Get lost." Qin Feiyong's face darkened. Lu Zheng said with a smile, "Don't be so unreasonable. We're all young people. Let go." "You can go," Qin Feiyong said and turned to land on the top of the mountain. At first, he suspected that Lu Zheng might be from Grandpa's family. But this person obviously didn't want to talk about his identity, so he couldn't be sure. "Oh, don't be like this." Lu Zheng shamelessly followed and said, "Look, we're both people with divine arts, and we're all monstrous talents. You won't lose out if we become sworn brothers, right?" Qin Feiyong frowned and said without looking back, "You can be more narcissistic." Is this narcissism? It's obviously the truth. As Lu Zheng said, he rushed in front of Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, "If you really don't want to become sworn brothers, then let's be friends." Not interested. Qin Feiyong went to the edge of the cliff, sat cross-legged on the ground, and continued to cultivate with his eyes closed. This person's background was unknown, and his strength was unfathomable. His behavior was also strange. It was best to stay away from him. Seeing that Qin Feiyong was stubborn, Lu Zheng was annoyed. If it weren't for his second grandpa's repeated instructions, he wouldn't have bothered to show his warm face to the cold. Suddenly, he rolled his eyes and ran to Lu Hong's side. He smiled and said, "Miss, do you need any help?" "No." Lu Hong answered coldly, then lowered her head and got busy. "You have personality. I like it. Lu Zhang rubbed his chin and looked at Lu Hong's back, his eyes full of playfulness. Miss, do you have a boyfriend? If you don't, do you think I can do it? I'm a very honest person. Usually, I blush when I see women. So, you definitely have a sense of security when we're together. Lu Zhang pestered her shamelessly. Aren't you annoying? Lu Hong raised her eyebrows. Look. After being with Qin Feiyong for so long, even your personality has become as cold as his. This is not good. Women are born gentle and cute. That's what makes them likable. Lu Zhang chuckled. Shameless. Hooligan. Lu Hong glared at him, then turned and walked to the other side. Lu Zhang hurriedly followed with a solicitous look. Seeing that Lu Zhang was harassing Lu Hong again, Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and shouted, "Leave immediately." What? You even want to interfere with my pursuit of love? Moreover, Lu Hong isn't your servant girl. What right do you have to care so much? Lu Zhang raised his head and looked at him with dissatisfaction. What do you want to do? Lu Hong glared at him angrily. Lu Zhang smiled and said, Isn't it obvious? I fell in love with you at first sight, so I want to stay and pursue you until you agree. Lu Hong's pretty face couldn't help but blush, but the look in her eyes became fiercer. Don't worry, I'm definitely not saying that I like you to get close to Qin Feiyong. I really like you. Listen, my heart is pounding. As Lu Zhang spoke, he really put his chest in front of Lu Hong. Lu Hong was about to go crazy. Qin Feiyong said, Ignore him. Lu Hong took a deep breath, nodded to Qin Feiyong, and continued to busy herself. Lu Zhang continued to pester her. Qin Feiyong also looked at Lu Zhang silently. He wanted to see what this person wanted to do. Next, Lu Zhang didn't leave. He kept circling Lu Hong. It seemed that he really liked Lu Hong. But Lu Hong always looked at him coldly. She only felt annoyed. Time passed like this day by day. Half a month later. Boom. A powerful saintly aura suddenly erupted on the mountain peak. Lu Hong and Lu Zhang sat opposite each other at the coffee table beside the small wooden house. When they heard movement, they immediately turned to look at Qin Feiyong. They saw that Qin Feiyong's cultivation had already stepped into the 8-star Battle Saint realm. Lu Zhang retracted his gaze and looked at Lu Hong. He asked, when did he break through to the 7-star Battle Saint realm? Lu Hong glanced at him indifferently and said, Half a month ago. Half a month ago? Isn't that when I came here? Damn, breaking through a small realm in half a month. What kind of monster is this guy? Lu Zhang looked at Qin Feiyong in disbelief. Don't speak ill of him. Lu Hong said angrily. It seems that you care about him a lot. But he doesn't seem to be interested in you. You should consider me. Look at me, in terms of talent, I'm not much worse than him. In terms of handsomeness, I can completely crush him. Why aren't you moved at all? Lu Zhang looked at her with a puzzled expression. Lu Hong rolled her eyes. After spending half a month with him, she realized that other than being a little narcissistic and arrogant, this person did not have any ill intentions. So her attitude was not as cold as before. However, she did not dare to let her guard down. After all, one could not judge a book by its cover. At the same time, Qin Feiyong opened his eyes, withdrew his saintly aura, and turned to look at Lu Zhang. Hi. Lu Zhang waved his hand in greeting. Qin Feiyong ignored him directly. He had already gotten used to this person's shamelessness these days. He retracted his gaze and scanned the mountains below. There was a faint trace of excitement in his eyes. He had finally become an 8-star battle saint. He could take the 9-turn dragon blood pill now. As long as he took the 9-turn dragon blood pill, his cultivation would instantly break through a small realm and become a 9-star battle saint. He would only be one step away from becoming a battle emperor. Once his cultivation broke through to the battle emperor level, he would be able to do many things, such as the 6-word divine formula and the alchemy scripture. The return formula, battle formula, and kill formula each had a heaven-defying power. The 4th divine formula would definitely not be weak either. In other words, he would have another trump card in his hands at that time. Chapter 1200. Phew! Qin Feiyong let out a long breath and suppressed his excitement. He entered the ancient castle, walked to the altar, and started refining pills. He had refined the 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill many times. Thus, He was able to refine 2 pills with ease. Wolf King opened his eyes and said helplessly, "Little Qin Zi, your cultivation speed is really enviable." Fatso, Viper, 2-winged snow eagle, and the others nodded in agreement. In terms of effort, they worked harder than Qin Feiyong. That was because they cultivated in seclusion in the ancient castle every day. However, the gap between them did not shrink. Instead, it grew bigger and bigger. Viper and Dan Wangkai felt it the most. Back in Qinghai, one of them was an 8-star battle saint while the other was a 9-star battle saint. At that time, Qin Feiyong's cultivation was only a 3-star battle saint. How long had it been? He had already broken through to an 8-star battle saint. After taking the 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill, it would not take long for him to catch up with them. Everyone felt a lot of pressure. Qin Feiyong glanced at them one by one and shook his head with a smile. There is motivation when there is pressure. The pangolin said, "This is not motivation, it's helplessness." Everyone nodded their heads in agreement. When they were with this guy, they had to be prepared to be attacked at any time. Qin Feiyong shook his head and laughed. He sat cross-legged on the ground and focused for a moment before taking a 9 reincarnation dragon blood pill. Fatso said, "Wait, you just left Lu Hong alone outside. Aren't you afraid that Lu Zhang will force himself on her?" "Do you think he will dare?" Qin Feiyong asked. "Who knows?" Fatso pursed his lips. Qin Feiyong said, "I'll tell you the truth. His liking of Lu Hong is just an excuse. His real goal is to get close to me." "Why would he do that? What's his goal?" Fatso frowned. "Who knows? But as long as it's not Lu Xingchen's people, it's fine." After Qin Feiyong finished speaking, he calmed down and focused on breaking through to the next realm. The energy of the 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill was extremely majestic, and it continuously surged into his limbs and bones. He could clearly sense that both his physical body and his essence, qi, and spirit were improving bit by bit. An unknown amount of time passed. Boom! All of a sudden, his aura burst out uncontrollably. Moreover, it was rising at an astonishing speed. Fatso sneakily glanced at Qin Feiyong, then looked at Wolf King, Viper, and the others. With a sinister smile he said, "How about we make a bet?" "What kind of bet?" Everyone looked at him suspiciously. Fatso said, "Let's bet on whether boss can succeed in one try." "Sure. I bet all my money that he can do it in one go." Without another word, Wolf King took out the Chenkuan bag in his chi-si and threw it on the ground. "I also believe that Qin Feiyong can succeed in one try." "Me too." Winged Snow Eagle, Black Dragon Snake, Ghost Snake Emperor, and Flood Dragon also placed their bets. Finally, they were all betting on Qin Feiyong to succeed in one try. Only Fatso had not placed his bet yet. He hesitated. Originally, he also wanted to bet on Qin Feiyong succeeding in one try, but now that everyone had placed their bets, wouldn't it be meaningless if he also placed his bet? Finally, he gritted his teeth, took out the Chenkuan bag, pressed it on the ground and said, "Fat Lord bet that he will need to take at least 2 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pills to succeed." "Brat, just you wait and cry." That's right, with Qin Feiyong's potential, how could he need 2 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pills? Everyone laughed in schadenfreude. TSK. Does this 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill success in one try have anything to do with his potential? Fatso coldly snorted. He didn't believe it. Everyone was paying close attention to Qin Feiyong. Qin Feiyong's aura was getting stronger and stronger, and he was about to reach the peak of the 8-star Battle Saint realm. The smile on Viper and the rest's faces became even wider. If nothing went wrong, he would definitely succeed in one try. This was because Viper and Dan Wangkai had both taken the 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill before, so they knew how huge the energy of the 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill was. Even if it had nothing to do with his potential, Qin Feiyong would definitely be able to break through. Boom! Finally, Qin Feiyong's aura had reached the peak of the 8-star Battle Saint realm. He was about to break through the shackles and become a 9-star Battle Saint, but suddenly, his aura began to weaken. What's going on? Wolf King, Viper, and the rest widened their eyes in shock. Haha. Needless to say, there must be insufficient energy. Fatso laughed out loud. This was really a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. This shouldn't be. If I can break through in one try, why can't he? Dan Wangkai said with a long face. You have neglected a very serious problem. You have been a 9-star battle saint for a long time, so the probability of success in one try is much higher. Boss has just broken through to the 8-star battle saint realm and hasn't stabilized yet. How can he succeed in one try? Fatty smiled proudly, his face blossoming with joy. Dan Wangkai immediately collapsed to the ground. Just as Fatso was speaking, Qin Feiyong took the second 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill, and majestic energy surged through his limbs and bones again. Boom! He broke through the shackles in one go and became a 9-star battle saint. I lost my entire fortune. Viper cried out in sorrow. As one of the Azure Sea's 10 heroes, he definitely had a lot of wealth, such as medicinal herbs, battle arts and so on. The reason why he bet everything was because he never thought that he would lose. Wolf King and the rest of the beasts were also dejected. Haha! I've earned big, I've earned big! Fatso, on the other hand, laughed loudly and beamed with joy. Looking at him, everyone gnashed their teeth in hatred. Brother Fatty. Suddenly, Dan Wangkai came in front of Fatso and smiled obsequiously. Fatso quivered and quickly waved his hand to keep all the Qiankuan bags. Then, he looked at Dan Wangkai warily and asked, What do you want? This. Let's discuss it. There are many important things in my Qiankuan bag, Dan Wangkai said pitifully. Fatso said, What does it have to do with me? You are the one who wanted to bet. Yes, it's my fault. How about this? You return the Qiankuan bag to me. If you need anything in the future, I will help you unconditionally. Dan Wangkai said. Fatso was stunned and asked, Really unconditionally? Dan Wangkai nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. Fatso lowered his head and muttered to himself, looking hesitant. Brother Fatty. Dan Wangkai was extremely anxious. As the #1 alchemist in Qinghai, his wealth could be said to be more than the sum of Viper and the others. There were even sacred artifacts. Fatso said, Call me Fat Lord. Okay, Fat Lord. In order to get back the Qiankuan bag, Dan Wangkai was going all out. He would do whatever he was told. Seeing how sincere you are, Fat Lord will. Fatso was all smiles. Dan Wangkai thought that Fatso had agreed, but Fatso's face suddenly changed, and he laughed. No way. Dan Wangkai's face suddenly darkened. Fatso said proudly, This was won by Fat Lord fair and square. Why should I return it to you? Damn Fatso, you're a bastard. Dan Wangkai roared, stomping his feet in anger. How about it? I'm a bastard. Fatso didn't care at all, and was extremely proud. Looking at his arrogant appearance, everyone wanted to rush up and beat him up. At this time, Qin Feiyong opened his eyes and looked at Wolf King, Dan Wangkai and the others speechlessly, and said, You guys reap what you sow. Although he was breaking through, he could clearly see what everyone was doing. He could only say that compared to Fatso, these guys were still too young. Everyone immediately lowered their heads, extremely vexed. Qin Feiyong was too lazy to care. He got up and walked to the front of the pill furnace, opening it again to refine pills. This time, he was refining the small creation pill. Breaking through to the 9-star war saint naturally opened the door to potential. Dan Wangkai, come over and help me. After refining the pill, Qin Feiyong called out to Dan Wangkai, then sat cross-legged on the ground and threw the small creation pill into his mouth. Dan Wangkai glared at Fatso and walked behind Qin Feiyong. The Emperor's might roared out and firmly imprisoned Qin Feiyong. Fatso rolled up his sleeves and shouted at everyone, Your chance to turn the tables has arrived. Quickly place your bets and leave. Scram. Everyone immediately glared at him fiercely. They had lost everything. What else could they use to bet? Did they want their lives? Boring. Fatso pursed his lips. This time, Qin Feiyong succeeded on his first try. Viper sighed. Once he breaks through the War Saint realm, his cultivation speed will increase explosively again. I really hope he suddenly becomes a piece of trash. The white-eyed wolf muttered. What did you say? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and looked at the white-eyed wolf unkindly. Did brother say anything? Cough, cough. The white-eyed wolf coughed dryly and shouted at Fatso and the others. Who said that just now? Quickly stand out for brother. Do you not want to live anymore? Everyone rolled their eyes. Qin Feiyong could not help but roll his eyes at it. He got up and left the castle. At the peak of the mountain, seeing Qin Feiyong appear, Lu Zhang casually glanced at him and did not pay much attention to him. He continued to pester Lu Hong. But suddenly his expression froze. Something seemed to be wrong? He looked at Qin Feiyong again. Immediately. He suddenly stood up. His eyes filled with disbelief. Lu Hong also looked at Qin Feiyong, but there was only a smile on her face. There was no surprise or shock. Swish! Lu Zhang took a step forward and landed in front of Qin Feiyong. He said in shock and anger, "What happened to your cultivation? Is there a problem?" Qin Feiyong looked at him calmly. "Nonsense. You just broke through to an 8-star battle saint. You went to the castle and became a 9-star battle saint. Is this not a problem?" Lu Zheng shouted. Qin Feiyong glanced at him indifferently and walked past him toward Lu Hong. "Tell me, how did you do it?" Lu Zhang chased after him, his eyes full of suspicion. Qin Feiyong suddenly turned around, grabbed Lu Zheng's clothes, and tore them into pieces. Lu Zhang was not the only one who did not expect this move. Lu Hong was also shocked. Qin Feiyong's gaze was fixed on Lu Zheng's chest. There was a dark gold potential imprint there. "What are you trying to do?" "Let me tell you, I'm not interested in men. You'd better watch yourself." Lu Zheng panicked. He quickly protected the potential mark and looked at Qin Feiyong warily. He obviously wanted to change the topic. Chapter 1201. Of course. Lu Zheng nodded unnaturally. "Are you that capable? If you really relied on yourself to open these doors of potential, would you still be an 8-star battle saint?" Qin Feiyong looked at him coldly. In today's world, only his ancestor relied on his own abilities to open all the doors of potential. Since then, no one else had done it. Lu Zhang claimed that he opened them himself. Wasn't he comparing himself to his ancestor? What a joke. His ancestor was shockingly talented. Who could compare to him after millions of years? Hearing this, Lu Zheng looked rather embarrassed. "Tell me, where did you get the potential pill from? Also, is Lu Zheng your real name?" Qin Feiyong narrowed his eyes, revealing a dangerous signal. He began to suspect Lu Zheng's identity. No. From the beginning, he had never believed this person. Although the Lu family was powerful, they had always been hidden from the world. Very few people knew about them. But it was not that no one knew. For example, Lu Xingchen, the state preceptor, and so on. They all knew of the Lu family's existence. Therefore, he could not rule out the possibility that this person in front of him was deliberately arranged by them to get close to him. Lu Zhang might be a fake name. "I will never change my name. Lu Zhang is me. If you don't believe me, I can swear on the name of my ancestors for 18 generations." Lu Zhang made a solemn vow. He felt a headache coming on. Why was this guy so difficult to deal with? In the past, he had looked down on Qin Feiyong and felt that this little cousin of his was useless. But now that he had interacted with him, he realized that he was too difficult to deal with. Qin Feiyong said indifferently, "It doesn't matter to me if all 18 generations of your ancestors die. I just want to know how your doors of potential were opened." "Bastard, how dare you say such things? Be careful of being struck by lightning." Lu Zheng was instantly enraged. 18 generations of his ancestors. Wasn't that equivalent to 18 generations of Qin Feiyong's ancestors? This was too much. Qin Feiyong said, "What do I have to do with you? Why can't I tell you?" "I just can't tell you. You can make any kind of joke except for this. I'm telling you, if you dare to talk nonsense again, I'll fight you to the death." Lu Zhang stared at him angrily. Qin Feiyong stared straight at Lu Zheng, his eyes flickering. Lu Zheng felt a little uncomfortable being stared at like that. A moment later, Qin Feiyong withdrew his gaze and walked to Lu Hong's side without saying a word. He then sat down on the stone bench. Lu Hong took out a tea set and obediently squatted at the side to boil water and make tea. Lu Zheng walked up and sat across from Qin Feiyong. "I'll say it again. I have no ill intentions towards you." "Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded faintly. There was no change in his expression. No one knew what he was thinking. Lu Hong finished making tea, poured a cup for Qin Feiyong, and then pushed it in front of Qin Feiyong. Thank you. Qin Feiyong smiled, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. The fragrance of the tea was strong, and he suddenly felt refreshed. Where's mine? Lu Zhang looked at Lu Hong. Pour it for yourself. Lu Hong said. Alas, this is the difference. No matter what I do for you, in your eyes, it can't compare to Qin Feiyong. Lu Zhang shook his head and sighed. His eyes were full of disappointment and helplessness. Lu Hong rolled her eyes. She turned to Qin Feiyong and said telepathically, Are you really going to keep him by your side? Qin Feiyong pondered and didn't say anything. Lu Hong said secretly, I know you must be thinking that this person is very likely to be from your grandfather's family. But people's hearts are unpredictable. What if he's not? If he's not, there's only one ending for him. Death. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed with murderous intent. How about this? Use your slave seal to control him. Then you can peek into his inner thoughts. As for his identity, it was only natural that the truth would be revealed. Lu Hong said. If I had the confidence to control him, I would have done so long ago. Qin Feiyong said secretly. What do you mean? Didn't you fight half a month ago? He's no match for you at all. Lu Hong was surprised. You only saw the surface. In fact, his strength is far more than that. Qin Feiyong said secretly. It can't be? Lu Hong was surprised. You're just a bystander. Naturally, you don't know. But I saw it very clearly when I fought with him head-on. I remember that when I used the second style of the Dragon God's roar, although he looked very scared, there was no fear in his eyes. This is enough to show that he still has a certain level of confidence. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Hong said secretly, According to what you said, aren't we keeping a disaster by our side? Whether it's a disaster or not is still unknown. But now, what puzzles me the most is that his Fire Phoenix technique and my Dragon God technique are almost the same. It gives me the feeling that it's a copy of the Dragon God technique. Qin Feiyong's brows were tightly knitted together. Could these two divine arts be related? Lu Hong was also thinking. Because at that time she also saw it. What shameful things are you whispering in secret? Could it be that they are discussing how to force a confession out of me? Lu Zhang looked at the two of them warily. You guessed right. Lu Hong said. Xiao Hong Honger, it's been so many days. Haven't you seen my feelings? I don't ask you to like me. After all, liking someone, especially a stranger like me, is a process. I will slowly open your heart and let you accept me. But please don't help the evildoer now, okay? You're making me very sad, you know? Lu Zhang was stunned and immediately cried out sadly. Snot and tears were running down his face. He was very sad. Lu Hong's face was dark and blue veins were popping out. It was a pity that this guy didn't become an actor. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong looked up at Lu Zhang and said, Do you want to hear a story? Lu Zhang was stunned and asked suspiciously, What story? There was once a young man who was a proud son and even had a chance to inherit the throne. But all of a sudden, everything changed. Father didn't like him. Not only did he destroy his cultivation, but he also expelled him from the family and became an abandoned son, Qin Feiyong said lightly. Lu Zhang stretched out his hand and said, Wait, isn't this talking about you? Qin Feiyong ignored him and continued. Those years, he was desperate and helpless. He didn't know how to live. He hated everyone in the world, especially his maternal grandfather's family. What the hell? What did his maternal grandfather's family do wrong? Why did he hate them so much? Lu Zhang frowned and looked very unhappy. The young man's maternal grandfather was a very powerful old man. There were also many powerful people in the family. But when the young man was in dire straits, not only did they not help him, they didn't even visit him. Tell me, if you met such a family member, wouldn't you hate him? You have to know that the young man was only 10 years old at that time. Can he bear this kind of pain? Qin Feiyong looked at Lu Zhang calmly as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Lu Zhang was speechless. Although the young man didn't say it, he always hated them in his heart. And he was also a very strong-willed person. No matter what difficulties he encountered, he never thought of asking his maternal grandfather for help. Maybe in his heart, he had already cut off this family relationship. Qin Feiyong said lightly. Nonsense. Lu Zhang suddenly stood up and glared at Qin Feiyong. He shouted, "How do you know that they didn't care about you or visit you? They just didn't show up. You are indeed a member of the Lu family." Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. Lu Zhang was stunned. His expression suddenly changed. He accidentally let it slip. He said in a low voice, "Are you setting a trap for me? You only realized it now. You are too slow." Qin Feiyong sneered. Lu Zhang was extremely annoyed. He exclaimed in his heart, "Second Grandpa, it's not my fault. This kid is too smart. It's impossible to guard against him." "Grandpa, is he okay?" Qin Feiyong looked at Lu Zhang and asked. Lu Zhang sighed helplessly and nodded. "He's okay. Do you really hate us?" Qin Feiyong smiled and said, "I used to hate you but not anymore." Lu Zhang breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Actually, we did appear. It's just that you didn't see it." "When?" Qin Feiyong asked. Lu Zhang said, "When you were beheaded in public, Second Grandpa personally took Uncle He and me to the Imperial City to save you. But in the end, we saw that someone came to save you, so we didn't do anything." Qin Feiyong nodded in realization and said, "Then how should I address you?" Lu Zhang said with a smile, "Call me cousin." Qin Feiyong looked at him unhappily. Lu Zhang said, "I'm not joking. I'm really your cousin." Qin Feiyong said helplessly, "Okay, I believe you. But why do you have to hide your identity? This is Second Grandpa's order. He doesn't want to hide it from you. He wants to hide it from the people around you. For some reason, our Lu family can't attract the attention of the Imperial Palace. So Second Grandpa is worried that the people around you will leak the secret." Lu Zhang said. "So that's the case." Qin Feiyong mumbled and said with a smile, "Don't worry. Whether it's Lu Hong or the others, those who stay by my side are the people I trust the most." Lu Zhang said, "Then we're not wrong to be worried. After all, we don't know the people around you." Qin Feiyong nodded. "That was true," he said. "But I don't understand. Why are you afraid that the people of the Imperial Palace will know?" Lu Zhang said, "You have to ask Second Grandpa about this. I don't have the authority to tell you. Of course, Second Grandpa won't see you now." Qin Feiyong frowned and asked, "The Second Grandpa you're talking about is my grandfather?" No. Second Grandpa is your second grandfather. Your grandfather is the eldest. The clansmen call him Great Grandpa." Lu Zhang said. Qin Feiyong said, "Then where is grandfather now?" A cold light flashed in Lu Zhang's eyes. He said with a smile, "Do you still need to ask? He's definitely in the village." "The village?" Qin Feiyong was stunned. Lu Zhang said with a smile, "Our Lu family is a group of ordinary people. So we live like ordinary people." "You're ordinary people? You must be kidding." Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him. "Hong, if you're interested, I can take you there. But there's a rule in our village. Any foreign woman who enters the village must first marry a man in the village." "Why don't you marry me?" Lu Zhang said with a chuckle. "Get lost." Chapter 1202. Lu Zhang pointed to the sky and vowed, "Heaven and earth can bear witness to my love for you." "Come on. Aren't you trying to get close to Qin Feiyong by trying to get close to me?" Lu Hong looked at him with disdain. Lu Zhang was stunned and laughed dryly. "You guys saw through me. We're not blind." Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him. Lu Zhang smiled embarrassedly. Buzz. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's image crystal made a sound. "Be quiet." Qin Feiyong glanced at the two of them and took out the image crystal. The next moment, an illusory figure appeared. It was a burly man with a tall figure and a rough face. His cheeks and chin were full of stubble, looking a little sloppy. "It's me, Yan Wei," the burly man said. Qin Feiyong asked, "How is it?" "The situation is not optimistic." Yan Wei shook his head. Qin Feiyong's eyes darkened. "What do you mean?" "To get close to the state preceptor, I have to enter the law enforcement hall first, but now I don't even have a way to enter the law enforcement hall. Because the law enforcement hall's recruitment conditions are too harsh, they directly recruit from the War God Temple." Yan Wei said. War God Temple. Qin Feiyong was silent. He naturally knew about this place. Only those with extreme talent and at least a battle sage could enter the war god temple. The most important thing was that the war god temple never recruited from the outside. They were selected from the disciples of the temple. And Yan Wei couldn't become a disciple of the temple at all now. The first was cultivation. The second was age. It had already far exceeded the recruitment standards of the temple. I've already thought of many ways, even finding someone to get in through the back door didn't work, so I can only look for you to see if you have any ideas. Yan Wei was a little anxious. Don't worry, there will definitely be a way. Qin Feiyong comforted and lowered his head to ponder. What's going on? Lu Zhang glanced at Yan Wei and then looked at Lu Hong suspiciously. However, Lu Hong didn't even look at him. She lowered her head and pondered. Suddenly, Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He looked up at Yan Wei and said, "Go find the imperial advisor and bring him here." What? Yan Wei was shocked. Lu Hong and Lu Zhang also looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. Wasn't bringing the imperial tutor here equivalent to digging his own grave? Qin Feiyong said, "Do as I say. It's best if you come back in an hour. I need to make some arrangements first." All right. Yan Wei nodded, and the shadow disappeared. Lu Hong withdrew her gaze and looked at Qin Feiyong with a frown. What on earth do you want to do? If we rely on ordinary methods, I don't know how long it will take for Yan Wei to lurk beside the imperial advisor. So we have to use some extraordinary means. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Zhang said suspiciously, "You want to use yourself as bait to help Yan Wei?" Qin Feiyong nodded. Good idea. Lu Zhang gave him a thumbs up. You call this a good idea? Lu Hong said angrily. It is. Think about it. After Yan Wei reports to the imperial advisor, the imperial advisor will bring people to capture Qin Feiyong. At that time, he will definitely reward Yan Wei. Yan Wei can take advantage of the situation and propose to follow the imperial advisor. And when the imperial advisor sees that Yan Wei has made a contribution, he may agree at once. It can be said that there is no other way more direct and effective than this. Lu Zheng said. Lu Hong said, "Of course I know what you said, but this is too risky." I don't agree. Qin Feiyong said with a smile, "Don't worry, I have other arrangements. Nothing will happen." What arrangements? Lu Hong frowned. Qin Feiyong took out the image crystal and poured his battle chi into it. Buzz. After a while, a familiar figure appeared in the void. It was Lu Xingchen. Lu Xingchen asked with a smile, "What can I do for you, Brother Qin?" Qin Feiyong said, "I need your help with something. Come to the Black Dragon Pool." Lu Xingchen said, "I know you don't come to me for no reason. Do you want to go now?" Qin Feiyong nodded. Okay. I'll be right there. Lu Xingchen nodded and turned off the image crystal. Why does your relationship with Lu Xingchen seem a little unusual? Don't tell me you've really joined forces with him. As your cousin, I have to tell you seriously that you must never betray the great Qin Empire. Lu Zhang said solemnly. No matter how much of a bastard I am, I won't forget my roots. Right now, we're just taking advantage of each other. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Zhang said with a smile. That had better be the case. Otherwise, it'll be ugly if we brothers kill each other. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and said, I don't think I've acknowledged you as my cousin yet, right? Whether you acknowledge me or not is destined. You can't run away even if you want to. Come on, call me big brother first. Let me feel it. Lu Zheng chuckled, his face full of lust. Qin Feiyong directly ignored him. Swish. Not long after, Lu Xingchen arrived. He glanced at Lu Zhang and asked in confusion, Who is he? Qin Feiyong said, A subordinate I just subdued. Lu Zhang's face darkened, and he said angrily through voice transmission, Aren't you afraid of being struck by lightning? Cut the crap. Qin Feiyong glared at him, then looked at Lu Xingchen and said, The state preceptor will be here later. Help me do something. What? Lu Xingchen was stunned and said in surprise, What the hell? Why is he here? Qin Feiyong said, Don't ask. You just have to hide in the dark and save me before he kills me. That's not a big problem. But I'm thinking, are you planning something again? If you are, there's no need to hide it from me, right? Lu Xingchen frowned. What do you think? Qin Feiyong asked back. Okay, I didn't ask. I'll go to the space divine item first. Lu Xingchen smiled helplessly. Wait. Qin Feiyong reached out to stop him and asked, where is Ren Duxing now? Lu Xingchen said with a smile, tell me what you're planning. I'll tell you where he is. You can go to the space divine item now. Qin Feiyong bluntly asked him to leave. Lu Xingchen smiled and didn't linger any longer. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. Lu Zhang said through voice transmission, can he be trusted? If Lu Xingchen didn't help when the state preceptor attacked, wouldn't he be killed? Don't worry. He still needs me to do something for him. Although I don't know what it is, I won't leave him in the lurch. You go to the castle and stay there. Qin Feiyong said to himself. The castle. Lu Zheng's eyes lit up. He had been interested in this mysterious castle for a long time. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sent Lu Zheng in. Then, he glanced at the top of the mountain and turned to Lu Hong. He said apologetically, I'm really sorry. You've worked so hard to arrange everything these days. It might be ruined in a moment. It's okay. Lu Hong shook her head. Qin Feiyong smiled and picked up his teacup. He chatted with Lu Hong while sipping his tea. Time passed quietly. When an hour was up, a terrifying divine power suddenly descended on the top of the mountain. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed. He exchanged glances with Lu Hong and pretended to be surprised. He looked up and saw a white-haired old man standing in the sky. Yan Wei was also beside him. Why are you here? Qin Feiyong suddenly stood up, his face full of horror. Boom. But the response was a terrifying divine power. Qin Feiyong and Lu Hong were immediately imprisoned. Swoosh. The state preceptor took a step forward and landed in front of them. He sneered, let's see how you can escape this time. Yan Wei also landed behind the state preceptor. He glanced at Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng and sneered. Qin Feiyong said in a low voice, how did you know we were here? The state preceptor pointed at Yan Wei and smiled. I have to thank him. Qin Feiyong's gaze turned and landed on Yan Wei. His eyes flashed coldly. Yan Wei sneered. Don't look at me like that. I'm just doing my duty as a subject. Qin Feiyong said, I don't remember seeing you before. Yes, you haven't seen me before, but I've seen you before. Yesterday, I was looking for herbs in the mountains and accidentally came here. I found you hiding here? You, Qin Feiyong, are full of evil. Everyone has the right to kill you. Naturally, I had to inform the state preceptor as soon as possible. Yan Wei said. Qin Feiyong's eyes were hazy. He said, do you know what the consequences of offending me are? Yan Wei said, I don't know. I only know how to get rid of evil for the people and share the burden of the state preceptor. The state preceptor was full of smiles. He seemed to be very satisfied with Yan Wei's attitude. He glanced at the mountain peak and smiled at Qin Feiyong and Lu Zheng. He said, it seems that you plan to stay here for a long time. Qin Feiyong was silent. Don't think about it. No one will come to save you now. When I kill you, your castle and Changshui will be mine. Haha. At that time, not to mention Mu Tianyang, even if all the strong people in the world come out, they won't be able to stop me. The state preceptor laughed wildly. His ambition was exposed. What exactly do you want to do? Rebellion? Qin Feiyong shouted. Rebellion? This is not a small crime, but it has nothing to do with you. After the state preceptor said that, his old eyes surged with killing intent. He landed in front of Qin Feiyong and slapped his palm towards Qin Feiyong's head. Go to hell. He laughed sinisterly. He had already imagined the scene of Qin Feiyong's head bursting open. But at this moment, Qin Feiyong and Lu Hong, who were standing in front of him, suddenly disappeared without a trace. How is this possible? The state preceptor's eyes widened in anger. He quickly scanned the surrounding void. He could actually escape from the imprisonment of the divine might? Little bastard. Abruptly, he roared, his hair standing on end. His divine might rolled in all directions. The giant peak under his feet instantly shattered and turned into dust. Following closely, his divine sense flooded out in all directions. However, wherever his divine sense went, he did not catch Qin Feiyong's aura, nor did he find any traces of the castle. This is impossible. His old face was filled with disbelief. How did this little bastard do it? Yan Wei's eyes flashed slightly, revealing a look of horror, and muttered, I actually let him escape. This time it's over. He definitely won't let me go. What should I do? I don't want to die yet. These words were obviously said deliberately for the state preceptor to hear. The state preceptor suddenly turned to look at him and shouted, Shut up for me. Chapter 1203. A mere Qin Feiyong was able to scare you to this extent. With just this bit of courage, are you worthy of following this nation preceptor? The imperial tutor snorted coldly. Before coming, Yan Wei had already made a request. Yan Wei panicked and hurriedly knelt on the ground, saying, I know I was wrong, I will definitely change. The imperial tutor glanced at him indifferently, then glanced at the void, opened a portal, and left with a belly full of anger. Yan Wei's eyes flashed, and he hurriedly got up and chased after him. At the same time, above a certain lake, a space divine object was hidden in the void and swept across. Inside the space divine object, Qin Feiyong, Lu Hong, and Lu Xingchen stood side by side. Previously, after saving Qin Feiyong and Lu Hong in the Black Dragon Swamp, Lu Xingchen immediately left in the space divine object. Although he was not afraid of the imperial tutor now, because of his identity, he did not want to meet the imperial tutor too early. Stop! Qin Feiyong suddenly stretched out his hand. The scene in the void in front of him immediately froze in the sky above a mountain. This meant that the space divine object had stopped. You owe me another favor. Lu Xingchen looked at Qin Feiyong with a smile. Qin Feiyong said, Speaking of favors, it seems that you also owe me a lot. Back then, I spared Feng Wuxia, Wan Qiu, and the others a few times. You actually still remember? Lu Xingchen shook his head and smiled helplessly. How can I forget a favor? Besides, it's a favor you owe me. But I'm wondering, where exactly is Wan Qiu now? Qin Feiyong said. Last time, he specifically asked the commander of the Kirin army to look for Wan Qiu, but the result was to no avail. You should be able to guess. Lu Xingchen did not answer directly. As expected, it's hidden in your spatial divine item. Qin Feiyong smiled coldly, glanced at the secret room in front of him, and said, I remember you said that this secret room is only a part of your spatial divine item. Yes. Lu Xingchen nodded. Qin Feiyong said, Then are you interested in taking me to other places? Lu Xingchen smiled and said, I don't think there's a need for that, because you've seen it before and even entered it. You have. Qin Feiyong frowned. Lu Xingchen said, That's right. Do you remember the valley you found in the desert of death? Qin Feiyong suddenly understood. It turned out that the valley was a spatial divine object. Since we're working together now, can you tell me if you've subdued anyone else other than Dong Qing, Zhang Jin, and Wan Qiu? Qin Feiyong said. There is. And they're all people you know. But you can only guess who they are. Don't say that I'm not sincere. After all, I didn't see your sincerity either. Lu Xingchen chuckled. Qin Feiyong's eyes flashed, and he said indifferently, Okay, I didn't ask. Send us out. Okay. But before we leave, I want to tell you something. Have you heard of the Sea of Reincarnation? Lu Xingchen said. The Sea of Reincarnation. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled, and a trace of fear crawled up his face. It seems that you've heard of it. If you're interested, you can go there. I promise you won't go in vain. After saying that, Lu Xingchen waved his hand and directly sent Qin Feiyong out. Then, he drove the spatial divine item and disappeared at the end of the mountain range without looking back. Lu Hong glanced at the void and said telepathically, What kind of place is the Sea of Reincarnation? The Sea of Reincarnation is the most terrifying forbidden area of the Great Qin Empire. It's located in the extreme north of the imperial capital. It's said that even the gods don't dare to set foot there. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice. When he was young, he had read about the Sea of Reincarnation in an ancient history book. It was a very terrifying place. But he didn't expect Lu Xingchen to suddenly mention this place. What exactly was hidden in the Sea of Reincarnation? He knew Lu Xingchen well. It was impossible for him to just say it casually. There must be some kind of factor or conspiracy. Are you kidding? Even the gods don't dare to set foot there. Isn't that a bit too exaggerated? Lu Hong was surprised. I've never been there, so I don't know the specific situation. But when I was young, someone repeatedly warned me that I could go anywhere except the Sea of Reincarnation. Qin Feiyong said. Who? Lu Hong asked. The current emperor. Qin Feiyong said. Lu Hong's pupils constricted. What kind of person was the current emperor? To be able to say such words was enough to prove that the Sea of Reincarnation was indeed extraordinary. Do you think I should go? Qin Feiyong looked at Lu Hong and asked. It's best not to go. Because with Lu Xingchen's character, he definitely won't let you take advantage of him. There must be a conspiracy. Lu Hong said. That's what I thought. But I really have to make a trip because I want to see what tricks he's playing. Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Lu Hong rolled her eyes at him and said helplessly, You know that there are tigers in the mountain, but you still want to go there. Qin Feiyong smiled slightly and said, But before we go, we have to make a trip to the treasure pavilion first. With that, he took out 2 illusory form pills. Bas. At this moment, the image crystal rang. Qin Feiyong took out the image crystal, and Fatso's shadow appeared. Fatso pursed his lips and said, Your cousin is looking for you. Cousin? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and turned off the image crystal. With a wave of his hand, Lu Zhang appeared out of thin air. He has to send a message to you first. I've never seen such a troublesome space divine object. As soon as Lu Zhang appeared, he began to complain, his eyes full of disdain for the castle. Qin Feiyong was surprised and said, You mean you've seen a lot of space divine objects? Lu Zhang was taken aback and waved his hand. It's not as exaggerated as you say, but I've seen space divine objects. Where have you seen them? Qin Feiyong's eyes sparkled. Don't look at me like that. Even if I give you a space divine object, you may not dare to accept it. Lu Zhang joked. Why don't you give it a try? Qin Feiyong provoked. Lu Zhang chuckled and said playfully, Is that so? What if I say that the owner of this space divine object is your grandfather? My grandfather also has a space divine object. Qin Feiyong's eyes trembled. Lu Zhang said proudly, What's so great about a space divine object? Let me tell you, I even have a divine object, Lu Zhang. Qin Feiyong's heart trembled. This was greatly beyond his expectations. He said in surprise, Really? Of course, why do you think the emperors of the past were so afraid of the Lu family? I'm not afraid to tell you the truth. If it weren't for the existence of the Lu family, you and your mother, who is my aunt, would have already gone to hell. Lu Zhang smiled coldly and arrogantly. Qin Feiyong sucked in a breath of cold air. He never expected that the foundation of his grandfather's family was so terrifying. But there was another problem. Since the Lu family was so strong, why didn't they dare to enter the imperial city openly? What kind of secret was hidden in this? Lu Zhang glanced at him and said indifferently, Don't think about it. There are some things that you will never think of in your lifetime. Huff. Qin Feiyong took a deep breath and calmed his emotions. He asked, Why are you looking for me? Lu Zhang chuckled and said, Aren't you going to the imperial city? I happen to want to go shopping too. I'm not going to play. Qin Feiyong frowned. You do your thing, and I'll play mine. What's the matter? Lu Zhang asked back. Qin Feiyong shrugged helplessly. He took a phantom pill and gave the other to Lu Hong. Qin Feiyong disguised himself as a thin and sickly young man. Lu Hong only changed her facial features slightly, but she still looked so charming. Lu Zhang touched his chin and looked at Lu Hong with a frivolous look. He said with a smirk, You're not a particularly charming woman, but why do I like you more and more? Hooligan. Of course, Lu Hong didn't look happy. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows and took out a phantom pill. He looked at Lu Zhang and said, Do you need it? Of course. Although I rarely go to the imperial city, some old monsters in the imperial city still know me. After all, I'm young, rich, and talented. I can't keep a low profile even if I want to. Lu Zhang snatched the phantom pill and threw it into his mouth. Idiot, right? Lu Hong rolled her eyes. Lu Zhang suddenly felt wronged and said, Am I so unbearable in your heart? I'm so sad. Get lost. Lu Hong's face darkened. Didn't this bastard have a serious moment? Lu Zhang chuckled. The next moment, he turned into a devilish young man, wearing a purple robe. His skin was as white as jade, and his long purple hair was extremely flamboyant. Moreover, he also took out a folding fan from his Xueqi bag and waved it leisurely. Looking at Qin Feiyong and Lu Zhang, he said with an evil smile, "How about it? Am I handsome now?" Lu Hong looked him up and down and said seriously, "Put on some makeup, wear a dress, and tie a ponytail. You'll definitely be more handsome." The smile on Lu Zhang's face suddenly froze. Wasn't she saying that he was a sissy? "I didn't expect a little girl like you to have such a sharp tongue. But I like it. Are you ready?" Lu Zhang said. "Ready for what?" Lu Hong didn't understand. Lu Zhang said with an evil smile, "Ready to accept my bombardment of pursuit." "Don't be narcissistic. Even if I become a nun, I won't like a man like you." Lu Hong snorted coldly. "It's okay. If you become a nun, I'll become a monk. Then we'll be more compatible." Lu Zhang smiled evilly. "You?" Lu Hong was mad. How could this person be so shameless? Looking at the two of them bickering, Qin Feiyong's lips curled into a meaningful smile. If Lu Zhang really liked Lu Hong, then this could be considered a good thing. After all, Lu Zhang, whether it was his family background or his own conditions, was completely compatible with Lu Hong. However, was Lu Zhang joking, or was he really interested? It still needed to be confirmed. Bas. He waved his hand and opened the portal. Looking at the two of them, he said with a faint smile, "Let's go." After that, he took the lead and stepped into the portal. "I'm telling you, stop fooling around." Lu Hong glared fiercely at Lu Zhang, then turned and followed him in. She said this because she was worried that Qin Feiyong would misunderstand. Because there was only one person in her heart, and that was Qin Feiyong. Fooling around? Lu Zhang gave an enigmatic smile and stepped into the portal as well. Empire City. The first district could be said to be the most prosperous district in Empire City. That was because there were countless wealthy and influential people gathered here. Chapter 1204. Precious Treasure Pavilion was undoubtedly the most bustling place in the first district. 4 black-robed guards stood upright on both sides of the entrance, watching the people entering and exiting with eagle-like eyes that were extremely sharp. They were in charge of maintaining the order of Precious Treasure Pavilion, and could not be distracted at any time. In front of the entrance, on the streets, more than 10 young men and women walked side by side. The men had a heroic aura. The women were young and beautiful. They wore bright and beautiful clothes and exuded an extraordinary aura. It was obvious that they were from wealthy families. A black-robed young man smiled. "Brother Haolong, I didn't expect that you would come to Precious Treasure Pavilion as well." "I didn't want to come either. Fei Fei was the one who dragged me here." The person called Brother Haolong shook his head helplessly. He was 7 feet tall. He wore a luxurious purple robe. His features were handsome and his black hair was like a waterfall. He was rather handsome, but there was arrogance between his brows. Walking with this person was a young woman in her prime. She was also wearing a luxurious purple dress. She was quite pretty. However, her pretentious appearance made one feel uncomfortable. The two of them held hands intimately and looked like a pair of lovers. "Brother Haolong, Sister Fei Fei, the two of you are truly a match made in heaven." A white-robed young man at the side smiled, and the flattery in his words was clear. "Of course. In the entire capital, who else is worthy of Fei Fei other than me?" The purple-robed young man said proudly. That's right. Brother Haolong is handsome and extremely talented. He's an unparalleled talent of the capital. Most importantly, Brother Haolong has a strong brother who is known as the #1 monster incarnate of the capital. We can never compare to him." The group of young men and women laughed. The purple-robed young man had a proud expression and enjoyed the feeling of superiority. How shameless. However, the group of people did not notice that there were 2 men and a woman behind them. One of them had a sickly face and was extremely weak. The other was devilish and eye-catching. The remaining woman had a picturesque appearance and her clothes fluttered, making one want to take a few more glances. That was right. They were Qin Feiyong, Lu Zhang, and Lu Hong. After entering the first district, they followed the group of people in front of them and walked towards the treasure pavilion. At first, they didn't care. But when he heard their conversation, it turned out that they were a group of rich playboys. Actually, Being a silk pants wasn't a big deal because there was no lack of silk pants in Imperial City. But, as a silk pants, not only did he not know his own limits, he even took pride in it and was immensely complacent. This made people feel disgusted. Therefore, Lu Hong could not help but mutter, her eyes filled with disgust. Just get used to it, Qin Feiyong said with a smile. It's not a matter of habit. It's a matter of principle. Look at them. Each and every one of them is ignorant and incompetent, arrogant and lascivious. They still think they're so great. It's disgusting to look at them. Lu Hong snorted coldly. I also dislike those people. However, little cousin, this man called Haolong has some grudges with you. Lu Zhang snickered. Grudges? Qin Feiyong was stunned and looked at him suspiciously. Lu Zhang said with a smile. He's from the Zhuge family. His full name is Zhuge Haolong. He's Zhuge Mingyang's cousin. Qin Feiyong suddenly understood. What do you think? Do you have an urge to beat him up? Lu Zhang smirked. Beat him up? Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled. He's just a clown. He can't arouse my interest. If it was Zhuge Mingyang, it would be a different story. You're not interested, but I am. Lu Zhang chuckled and shook his head with a sigh. They're all marquis descendants, but they're all licking their faces to curry favor with others. How pathetic. His voice was not loud, but it could clearly reach the ears of Zhuge Haolong and the others. The group of people was stunned. They turned to look at Lu Zhang and did not pay much attention to him. They thought that Lu Zhang was talking about someone else. Qin Feiyong and Zhuge Haolong were also very dissatisfied with Lu Zhang's actions. Lu Hong furrowed her beautiful brows and said unhappily, You came all the way here just to make trouble for us? This is considered trouble? You think too highly of them. Lu Zhang said disdainfully. You're very arrogant, aren't you? Lu Hong said with a dark face. In this situation, it was naturally best to keep a low profile as much as possible. Because if they caused any big trouble, it would not benefit them at all. Seeing that Lu Hong was really angry, Lu Zhang quickly smiled apologetically and said, Okay. I'm being nosy. I won't cause trouble anymore, okay? Don't be angry. Look, you look so ugly when you're angry. Don't look if it's ugly. Lu Hong turned her head and snorted. This? Lu Zhang was stunned. What did he say wrong again? Qin Feiyong coughed and said telepathically, Women are very sensitive to the word ugly. I see. Lu Zhang suddenly understood. Qin Feiyong said in amusement, Your EQ is not good. You have to learn more from others. Humph. You speak as if you're very good. If you were really good, you wouldn't still be single now. Lu Zhang said disdainfully. Qin Feiyong was stunned and looked quite embarrassed. It seemed that his EQ was not very good either. Brother Haolong, wait. Suddenly, there was a loud shout. A young man in brocade ran over from behind. Get lost. Looking at Qin Feiyong and the other two in front of him, he did not say anything about bypassing them. He shouted arrogantly and directly reached out to push Lu Hong and Lu Zhang away. Caught off guard, Lu Hong and Lu Zhang fell to the ground on the spot, looking very embarrassed. Haven't you heard that a good dog doesn't block the way? But in this regard, the young man in brocade did not apologize at all. Instead, he looked at Lu Hong and Lu Zhang arrogantly and shouted. Then, the young man in brocade swaggered toward Zhuge Haolong and the others without looking back. My bad temper. Lu Zhang was immediately angry. He got up from the ground, rolled up his sleeves, and walked angrily toward the young man in brocade. Lu Hong got up and pulled him. How can you tolerate this? Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows. Lu Hong tidied up her dress and hair, glanced at the young man in brocade, and said lightly, If we bite back after being bitten by a dog, what's the difference between us and a dog? This? Lu Zhang was stunned and laughed. Honger is right. We can't be dogs that bite people. Who are you calling a dog? The young man in brocade suddenly turned around and stared fiercely at Lu Zhang and Lu Hong. Zhuge Haolong and the others had already stopped when they heard the young man in brocade, so they also heard it. They looked at Lu Hong and Lu Zhang with a trace of hostility in their eyes. What's going on? The pedestrians on the street also stopped and surrounded them, looking at the two groups of people suspiciously. You're still angry? Lu Zhang raised his eyebrows. I told you not to be a dog that bites people. Let's go. Lu Hong said lightly and continued to walk toward the treasure pavilion. For my lifelong happiness, I'll tolerate it. Lu Zhang clenched his fists and chased after Lu Hong. Qin Feiyang was like a bystander from beginning to end, remaining silent. However, they didn't want to cause trouble, but it didn't mean that others wouldn't either. Just as the three of them walked in front of Zhuge Haolong and the others and were about to go around them, Zhuge Haolong's eyes turned cold. He stood in front of the three of them and said, "Did I say you can leave?" At the same time, the others also spread out and surrounded Qin Feiyang's group of three, all of them sneering endlessly. "You're taking advantage of us?" Lu Zhang was irritable. Lu Hong reached out to stop him. She looked at Zhuge Haolong patiently and asked, "Then what do you want?" Zhuge Haolong waved at the young man in brocade. "How you come here?" The young man in brocade walked to Zhuge Haolong's side and crossed his arms. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two, the sarcasm on his face undisguised. Zhuge Haolong said, "Do you know who he is?" Lu Hong said, "I'm new here. I really don't know who he is." Zhuge Haolong said, "Then listen carefully. He's called Zhuge Haoyu, my younger brother." Zhuge Haolong? Zhuge Haoyu? Who are they? So impressive? Someone in the crowd asked softly. You don't even know them? Are you from the countryside? Well, it's my first time in Imperial City. No wonder. Let me tell you, they are people you can't afford to offend. Have you heard of Zhuge Wuhou? I've definitely heard of him. Zhuge Haolong and Zhuge Haoyu's father is Zhuge Wuhou's younger brother. In other words, these two brothers are the direct descendants of the Zhuge family. With such a powerful family background, how can they not be impressive? Even if they kill people on the street, no one will dare to do anything to them. Do you understand? If that's the case, won't those three be in trouble? Nonsense. Those who dare to offend the Zhuge family will lose a layer of skin even if they don't die. But they didn't do anything wrong. They've been tolerating. Isn't this too unfair to them? Young man, you're too young. In Imperial City, there's no such thing as fair or unfair. There's only power. That's right. For commoners like us, it's best to tuck our tails between our legs. These discussions were very soft. They were afraid that Zhuge Haolong's group would hear it and bring harm to themselves. But Qin Feiyang and the other two could hear it clearly. Because their cultivation was much stronger than Zhuge Haolong's group. The strongest in Zhuge Haolong's group was only a 1-star combat emperor. The weakest was only a 5-star combat king. They naturally didn't put such a small character in their eyes. Lu Hong smiled and said, "So they're from the Zhuge family. But I heard that Zhuge Wuhou is a righteous and respected person. But how can his descendants be a group of dogs that bite people?" She's actually humiliating Zhuge Haolong? Is she really not afraid of death? This Zhuge Haolong is relying on the power of the martial Marquis government. He can do anything. Yeah, he used to do evil in Imperial City. He bullied people and women. And I also heard that Zhuge Mingyang took good care of him. Zhuge Mingyang is the #1 monster in the Imperial City. Even the Imperial Master and His Majesty think highly of him. Who dares to offend such a person? The people murmured and looked at Lu Hong in disbelief.